Okay, this is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight. Just a little two-man job this time around. You know what? Bringing back the old school vibes. If people don't know, I actually do think we should schedule some of these every now and then. We should decide on like a perfect week for like a two-man episode or something. Because the problem is basically, spoiler, just if we don't get a guest, we're like, whatever. Fire up the fucking music, this is what we do, innit? But with that said, obviously this show is still brought to you by Esportsbet, which is obviously the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They still have that initial deposit bonus, 50% up to 200 USDT. And they have the alternate one still, which is the one where there's the third part, don't worry. The alternative one is the one where they will forgive up to 100 USDT of a bet if it's your first time. You just message the mods on Discord and you say, Insight and Esports sent you, IOE sent you, and they'll give you up to 100 USDT. But there's also a third thing, and if you're, oh no, wait a second. That's for watch parties. I've just remembered. So there is a third thing, but you have to tune in a watch party. If I don't spoil it, it's a way to get a little bonus. But again, I can't tell you what. Anyway, speaking of bonuses, things you didn't expect to happen, happy accidents. You know what's amazing, Monty? After all, I've actually been going keto recently. I've been trying to keep carbs out of my life. I've just been sticking to the meat of things. People might see it on Twitter. There's a lot of blood, a lot of in the hunter mindset, But I thought, why not spoil ourselves? So, are you ready? Have you got?
I'm so ready.
Okay. So people might know, obviously in season 8, KT Roaster, there was finally no razors, right? So I thought we'll check it out. We got our own. How did Rogue do? I bet them. They were like 3.400. So. Yeah. Ooh, quite a sharp taste. It's quite a cutting, decisive victory. What's that? Oh, someone's put a bit of flaccid on the side. That's disgusting. Sorry. Because by the way, as an aside, I actually don't even have anything against flaccid the player. I think he's actually doing a really fucking good job. I think he's an amazing example of a tertiary carry in League of Legends, which you very rarely get. But what I will say is his fans are so feckless. It just annoys me so much, mate. Especially because, by the way, this is where you can't beat a fan, Monty. In this particular series, he proved he is not a world-class AD carry. Spoiler, if you put Upset in his spot, he would have fucking been amazing. This guy had all the carry champs, and then they were telling me what he really, but he did all right in CS. Shut your fucking mouth. He was basically Uzi, you idiot, and they did nothing. Because, spoiler, in fact, you know what, should we get into it? So obviously we're parlaying it into it.
All right.
Get into this topic.
The funny thing is in the previous series that Rogue and G2 played, he played either a lane bowling champ in the Draven, but he also just played 2 games of Seraphine, guys.
Of course. Yeah.
2 of those wins were on Seraphine. And then what was enjoyable about this series was we got to see some aggressive matchups between the Kalista and the Draven. Then we got to see Comp bringing out the Caitlyn again, which then prompted
the draft
the
was wild. Think how many different comps you saw in this game. It wasn't a boring same handshake. It was all over the place, and you could never guess what Rogue was going to draft, mate. That was mental.
Yep. And then the final game, you get the Zeri versus Sivir matchup. So basically what was cool was we got a tour of all of the various AD carry.
Yes.
We got the weird AD carries. We got the early game AD carries that are frequently banned in Kalista and Draven. And then we got the super scaling AD carries. Who won all of those matchups? Oh, right. It was Comp. He won. And that's what you want. That's the level of domination that you want to see. No, let's play some weak side Seraphine and try and get people out of that lane and just hit R later in the game. No, this was the get your dick out matchup in the bot lane. Comp didn't even die. Hello? For an entire series.
Also, by the way, watch these team fights. He was kiting so well behind me. He's always doing the damage on the kit. But you can never get to him, mate. You can never get that back line.
Yep. And not only that, but Berserker died 1 time in 3 games in Cloud9's matches. So you can see how
dominant. Of course, though, because he's not American, Monty. I've learned the way the broadcast works. I don't question it anymore. Whatever. You all have your fun. You all have your fun.
I think this series overall for LEC. Now, we made a joke on Competitive Edge this week that obviously Rogue is going to win when we don't expect them to win, because that's just when we bet against them, because of course that's how it would go. Although you did actually bet on them for the finals, which I would have bet, but my internet situation is so garbage right now while I'm not at home that
people don't know. the odds, the problem was the odds
Like
were so absurd on
3.5.
both ends. Like, even though I thought G2 was going to win, they had like a 1.3. Like, I'll give people a quick lesson. Sure, in general, right, Monty tends to overbet the favourites. I tend to overbet the underdogs. But we're sort of coming to the middle of it. What I've learned is this. The reason why betting loads of 1.3 favourites, even if you're sure, isn't that great is because if like one loses, you just give all that profit back for like the 3 you got before. Yeah. Whereas it's the opposite concept for an underdog. So sure, I actually did go too far. I did try to pick somewhere, so I talked myself into it. But this was a perfect example of one, especially because I'll say this as a final thing. I said it on the watch party. Even though I don't know how they could win, League of Legends especially, I think it's because you don't have as big a circuit and so many chances. League of Legends has some of the most wacky finals I've ever seen. I mean, remember last split? Everyone thought Rogue might win, actually. They were coming from the upper bracket. Like, it's the only game I've ever seen where I almost feel like form doesn't matter in a final, mate. Probably because they get to play so few in their career or something. You know the one. I mean, I'm still triggered over fucking MVP Ozone beating CJ Enter's players when they were on a 13-game winning streak and they had the whole meta figured out with the best player in the world. And not only that, they were actually just killing the best player in the world over and over. And I was just there in Korea like, this fucking sucks. And I had a hangover that day. So it was like, this is brilliant. Great.
Watching on his stupid Zach.
Oh, no.
It was terrible. Yeah.
And then all I remember, because remember, I was hating him because I was wanting Blaze to win. All I remember was that fucking MVP manager coach guy doing that like whack. Like, you know, he did that like Eddie Gordo style, like capoeira move. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I just watched him get 3-0 and this motherfucker's swagging on us and everything. Like, get out. Because I was like, no, manager never does that. Like, that was a really weird move, to be fair. He had pretty good athleticism, I gotta say, though. I was pretty banging in a way.
Yeah, I had forgotten that happened. So thanks for the reminder.
Here's what we'll do.
Fun memory.
I think what we do is this: we teased them with a bit of the talk there, but we only sort of gave them the like little sample, sir.
That's right.
Shall I open this one? I think we come back out in the industry stuff, then we go back in that later.
We have to eat your fucking broccoli first, guys. That's the thing about this show. You can get all the sweet analysis, all the stuff you want to hear about the teams, about the finals, about the world's group draws that we're going to go into. But first up, you have to eat your vegetables and get what's good for you, because you're only going to get it on this show, guys, because everyone else is in Riot's pocket and can't say shit without losing their co-streaming privileges or what have you, without jeopardizing their careers with Riot. But we make a living off of criticizing Riot. So here you go. The one place.
I saw an article today that would blow your mind. It was like basically a puff piece some guy had written. I'm not sure what the publication was. And the title of the piece was how Jackie Felling, the new LCS commissioner, had like something like increased like fan interest in the LCS. So first of all, by the way, that would be quantifiable. You'd be able to know that. Secondly, the league's dying, by the way. The league is literally dying. So even if you think she's a good commissioner, I would say we're probably going to talk about some things that would suggest not doing the commissioner's job. The idea, like, what sort of mad puff piece is that, mate? Like, in what we just had a discussion a few episodes ago. Like, we don't think like Monty casting Worlds changes the viewership. You think having a commissioner makes me like, you know what? I think I am interested in this LCS thing you're talking about. I've heard that commissioner's straight. What are you talking about? Why are we writing these articles? These are just silly.
So I think that there are a few issues with this. So we've discussed this before, but even if she was the greatest commissioner of all time, in an actual league, the commissioner would be the top authority and have power. Instead, there are a bunch of people above her, like lots of people, who are going to have the final say on things and not her. So she has bosses who then also have bosses who all work for esports at Riot Games. So the title itself is deceptive if you're considering. I think
it's just spokesperson, Monty. If I had to rename it,
no, I'm sure she does a lot. And honestly, like a lot of what has changed, like the production quality is way better this year than it has been. Look, I liked them bringing back the players at the finals. I think they did a really good job, and we'll talk about that. But the issue is that there's only so much you can do because of the hierarchy of Riot. And also, I think one of the things that we need to discuss, and this may not be entirely her fault because the rules for LCS may have been set before she took over this position, and we'll see what they do in terms of changes. But the vegetables that you guys got to eat is an actual honest conversation about this Danny substitution, because this has been an issue that I think is fraught with a lot of difficulties. And
it's what you call a
unfortunately,
third rail topic, Monty.
Yeah.
You know, the third rail is the electrified one on the train
Yes.
tracks. So if you just touch it, you die, don't you? You get electrocuted. So the premise comes, right? It's not even that, like, you have to have the wrong opinion to get in trouble. If you say anything that the zealots don't like, you automatically, if you're not on their side, you're against them. Even though it's a ridiculous spectrum to have. So essentially, if you criticize anything tangential to this story, they will imply you are actually saying mental health doesn't exist, isn't a problem, and that he doesn't have any issues whatsoever. Even though you'll find out, we'll never say that on this episode. I did a video, never said that. In fact, I'll quickly put out there my general position, because it's actually what I've learned from CSGO. Because in CSGO, by the way, we've had a lot of these situations a la Danny and Double if happen. Like, we have had flushes. I think it was his mom died. Right? No, Flush had died. His mom literally died, like, right before a tournament. I think Dupree's father died before he won. I think Katowice, the third major or something. We've had a bunch of scenarios like this happen. Electronic had a child but still played the next tournament. What I always say is this, because actually, this is the key thing. It's not about, like, the ruling and what the team does, because as an individual, I can't know their mind state. I cannot know what experiences they have had. I don't think it's actually possible for me to judge. Like, should they play? Is it? But, like, I can't know. It's such that's essentially why I think it's hard to make rules like this. It's essentially just a completely different realm I can't access. So what I do is I do the opposite. I don't say you should have played. I say if you are like double lifting you play or flush or if you can actually then, or Dupree, if you play it and then you win, you're a hero. I'll just say that. I'll give you mad praise for doing it, because I can imagine there are circumstances that would essentially limit you and mean you couldn't play. So if someone comes through it, great, awesome job. But that's the problem I get with this, by the way. Even that is almost fraught with like danger saying that, because then people are going to go, so you're implying the other guy isn't a hero. It's like, actually, that's something I want to say. I saw people go too far the other way. I'm willing to create this area of uncertainty where we just can't know. And essentially, it's up to the team if they have subs to replay. That's on them. But for the player, if he chooses I can't play, that's something, by the way, the team has to choose if they agree, etc. But assuming they do, he goes out and he's substituted out. He doesn't play, right? But in this kind of scenario, I saw people doing this, dude. You know what? So courageous to take a game out, though. And it's actually so brave. You're not now a hero, because essentially in this case, what you're actually claiming, by the way, is a kind of injury. You're saying basically, and this could be mental, could be psychological, could, by the way, I don't even know, could be something happened in his life, could be something that happened to some family member of his that's affected him. Because something terrible happened to you. Actually, you know what? We're going to reframe that as the heroic thing is just to have it happen to you. Like, that's weird, because I think that almost encourages like a world where essentially, like I say, it almost encourages like people. I think essentially they're going to actually one day pin the guy who does go through all that and play it. It'll be like the fat shaming thing. You know, the way they don't do it, right? It's like, oh, stop saying people are fat. No, they get the person who loses weight and is really thin and looks awesome and go, you fat shame by existing. Like, I don't want to go to that world where like we're just messing up. So let's create a reasonable space where you don't have to criticize someone, you don't have to get in their arse about well, tell me exactly how you feel and all that. Like, we don't need to know those details. My whole topic on this, by the way, was never about Danny. The video was about Danny. My topic is about the second, third order effects and how other parties treat us. That's the topic we're going to talk about here. We're not going to speculate on anyone's mental health.
Yeah. And the thing is like, I would tell you guys if I knew what was happening with Danny. I wouldn't tell you what it was, but I would say, hey, I know, so I think this is my opinion based on the information that I have, which could be like, oh, it was totally justified, or I think this is ridiculous, or somewhere in between those things. But I'm just going to tell you straight up, I don't know. So I have to operate just with theoreticals, and then I have to say what I think the effects of this are going to be, because I don't think it's great for competitive integrity. I don't think it's great for precedent, although I also believe that they will change the rules. There's also some fuckery going on from EG that has never been discussed. So basically what happened, guys...
Yeah, go on.
...is that you are supposed to have, for playoffs, you're supposed to designate 2 substitute players, okay? And the reason behind this is that in the regular season, you do not need to designate them because you can move players between Academy and the LCS team.
You have 5 players. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, clearly they want to limit that for the playoffs. Although, to be fair to the situation, I actually don't know why you need to limit that in the playoffs. Like, if you want to sub your Academy players in your fucking LCS playoffs, I say let you do it.
Here's the thing, Monty. I'll give you the counter. The counter is, I'm Steve Arhanset. I'm never going to let this happen to me again. So you know what? Hansama, you're out. Turns out I actually had, like, Kobe on my bench, and he can just play. He's in. That's the problem. Someone could have used the Academy angle just for this, right? Still, obviously not that likely, but I agree. You have to, at some point, by the way, spoiler, there are no good decisions in these scenarios with subs, because technically, you shouldn't be allowed one. But one thing that I do think was mad that you're setting up to is, dude, it's not the case that like EG's at fault for what's happened to Danny. They're not necessarily at fault for taking him out and agreeing he shouldn't play. They're not at fault maybe even for wanting the Cowrie guy to play once this situation has happened. But I found it really distasteful, the idea nobody brought up and nobody criticised them for trying to essentially exploit the substitute rules, as far as I can tell, to just have an extra coach in the room. And by the way, when your team is the God coaching staff, mate, you can't have your cake and eat it. Well,
it's...
You know, but, no, that actually doesn't mean that. As I'll tell people again, having your cake and eating it means you eat it and then you think you still have it. You haven't. You've eaten it, haven't you? So, no, the premise of that scenario is you chose what you wanted. You wanted an overpowered coaching staff. Well, guess what? Now you've only got a jungle. And the other maddest detail of all, a lot of people won't know, I looked it up. The actual guy who was a coach used to be a player. He also plays jungle. Give me a break. Because, you know, they were going, well, what could they do, Monty? They needed an ADC. Well, give me a break.
It's even worse than that, Thorin. I don't think it was for having another person in the room. I think they can have more coaches in the room. The thing about it is that Riot will only pay for transportation and hotel for a certain number of people, including the substitutes, if they go to Chicago. So usually what the teams do is that they'll put somebody into that substitute role, often a coach, so that they don't have to pay for travel and accommodation fees themselves, which obviously is ridiculous. It's just going to Chicago for a weekend. Okay.
Fair. So that is something that an evil genius would do, though. That's one angle I'll give him credit for. There we go. That's living up to the brand. Live evil.
So
exactly.
I don't know whether it was, as you say, they only had a certain number of people who could go into the room, and those included the
substitutes. That's just a speculation.
But I do know that Riot pays for a certain number of people for travel and accommodation for the teams, and that it's possible that EG put this person on that so that they wouldn't have to pay cynically, even though they could obviously pay for a round trip flight to Chicago and a hotel for 4 or 5 days. Point is like EG didn't think this through, clearly. And, you know, they sent Cowrie back to Turkey or Europe, wherever he was, because they had to recall him at the last second and end up, you know, bringing him in. But the problem is that when it comes to competitive integrity, so also you say that EG isn't at fault. Technically, we don't know that EG wasn't at fault. EG may have created the problem which triggered Danny's mental health crisis. Like, we don't know that.
Sure.
I mean, I can say that Danny didn't look great for the whole playoffs, and not only like in terms of his play, but in terms of his player cams, his reactions. He looked really off, you know, before whatever last event in their victory caused him to kind of be pushed over the edge or what have you. But also because there's no information and this has been categorized as an emergency.
Yep.
I mean, how do you categorize a mental health emergency? Now, there may be something really serious that happened. That's true. That is, you know, categorized. But if it's just, you know,
it's worse than that, Monty. You say, how can you categorize? They say they verified it. I will say that is impossible. Now, listen, I'm not saying the entire field of like clinical psychology doesn't exist or anything. What I'm saying is this. Again, this is the problem again with this conversation. I'll reframe it. We're not talking about the Danny situation because we can't know that. What we're worried about in this scenario is you set a precedent and someone else, sinister, could decide, that's a loophole I could get through. And so even though everyone's going to go, it's so unlikely, mate. I'm in a game where CSGO is full of match fixes. I think the World Champions in League of Legends match fixed a few years ago. Savior, Life, 2 of the greatest StarCraft players match fixed. People do Chinese betting rings, all that. The idea that it does, you can't just say it might happen. It does happen. It does happen. The question is, are you going to allow it to happen one time so that 9 people can get through and maybe be cool, or 90 people can get through? For me, the problem is the extreme violations, what you could get from that, as in this scenario, could have even made an example. Like the joke is, if I really did have double lift on my bench, I'd be better in this match, wouldn't I? I might win. So you don't want someone to do a cynical 2-man lineup like that. You don't want someone to lie about this. So one thing I noticed that I thought really was wild was in the statement. That's why I alluded to the fact I don't think she did a good job as a commissioner, because there was no public thing. There was no, it wasn't even posted on LoL Esports. Jat happened to just reference it in an article. That's it. It was never put. By the way, if you went to LoL Esports, you'd never know Danny wasn't there. They've already banged on about him the whole fucking year, but you'd never know he wasn't going to be in the finals. You'd be like, oh, brilliant, evil geniuses. So they never put like a news post, as far as I can tell. And then the reason why, spoiler, it's obvious, because in a formal post, you'd have to do the 5 Ws. Who, what, when, where, why, and where. You know, this is ridiculous. So instead, what they did is, Jackie Felling went on Reddit, so she's actually at Lena's status now. She went to Reddit and replied to, not even made her own thread, replied to a fan. That's it. And then on Twitter, she sort of said something tangential, which was basically more just like, I've had problems myself with, mental health, and I've suffered, which is like just to say that you empathize essentially. But what I couldn't stand about the way it was written, Monty, was it was written so informal. It wasn't written like a professional statement. And as a result, for example, she never addressed what they'd done with their 2 subs and the fact that one of them wasn't even really an eligible player. That was never mentioned. Instead, what you did is this. You made people feel really sorry because someone might be going through a really suffering, tough time, right? And you played on that to imply we have to just give them everything and throw the rule book out, right? Which is like, that will never make sense, by the way. That angle will never make sense. There's no sport in the world where you can just strip away the rules because someone has a hard time. There's tragedy befalls all of us. The reason it's called integrity is it holds together. It's something that remains stable. It can't be going willy-nilly over. Because here's the thing I would ask, dude. What if there was another player in the LCS, and they didn't know this, by the way, Monty, and he himself was having a really hard time? Like, maybe his game went to shit in the playoffs. Maybe he was feeling like he let the team down. His team was supposed to win. This has happened many times in LCS, by the way. And behind the scenes, maybe he's actually having sort of like a really hard time. He's breaking down, but he's thinking to himself, I can't sit out. My team's got top and jungle as their sub positions, and I'm, let's say, support. How can I sit out and let the whole team down? But it turns out if he'd have actually just said, I have these problems, they'd have created a whole new... See what I mean? That's why it's not integrity. What about all the other people? They never got a chance to do this. Plus, that's my problem with it.
I was saying his champion pool had issues. He wasn't performing well. His laning was quite bad.
Yep.
And so the problem is they actually upgraded their AD carry, at least in the current meta and at the current time.
And in the games, if you just watch them.
For Danny, now the inability to play the champion pool, his kind of regression, because he used to, coming into MSI, he was having a lot of these problems, and then it looked like his laning had gotten better, but then it kind of regressed during playoffs again. And so the problem is like, it could be tied to this mental health issue, like why his performance is this way for sure. But the problem is like you can have an emergency substitute of a player who's better. And this just incentivizes teams basically to potentially create artificial mental health crises. Again, I'm not accusing EG or Danny of doing this.
We're talking about the future team that exploits this.
Yes, exactly. And I think that it sets a really bad precedent because it's not like a big conspiracy to say this, because it's pretty easy for a coach or a manager to say, hey, you look really stressed right now. Spoiler, guys, they're fucking professional players. They are always mentally stressed.
It's an occupational hazard. Obviously.
Every fucking one of them is always going fucking crazy half the time.
Even the ones that win.
Yeah, these are people, guys, who have such an insane level of drive that they want to play one video game 14 hours a day for years just for the chance to compete at the top level. And then if they perform badly, they get shit on social media as if they're complete losers who have no work ethic. So, it's not low stress. So the point is like, if there is no verification of what a mental health crisis is amongst a career and professional class of people who are always under extreme pressure, to keep their jobs, from the fans, from public exposure, from the nature of competition, then it's like getting a medical marijuana.
That was literally the analogy I gave in my video.
Really? So I just came up with that right now.
No, what I said was basically, if you don't know, back in the day, because the doctors used to A, be doctors who liked weed and wanted to spread the message, and B, they knew they got money for selling the card. The joke was whatever symptoms you said, they would say, so I have problems sleeping, I've got something for that. Oh, I've got like tension in my legs, got something for that. I'm a bit stressed about everything. Oh, stress, got something. Like the joke was whatever you said, they were, here's the weed card. And so you were going to get it no matter what. It became an industry, didn't it? By the way, one thing I'll even say very briefly, I'm not even an expert about League of Legends, Monty. Normally I say I leave draft out of it. Mate, I just went before this game and I looked it up, right? The champions they play and what they've been playing. Do you know what made me the most sick? This actually really turned my stomach because I worried that actually EG would win and it would violate the whole competitive integrity of the tournament. When I looked, the only 2 ADCs in the whole tournament who actually do play the whole European and Eastern meta were FBI and were Berserker. And so what you did to 100 Thieves and Cloud9, if they'd have had to play Cloud9 as well, is you said, you know that enormous draft gap you've got by having one of the best players at this position who has insane variety, because by the way, if basically even FBI wasn't playing that great, he has all the champions as well, he plays them all. You've just said, right, fuck your draft gap, you don't get a draft gap, because somehow your sub is the third ADC in the league now that has all that.
Yeah.
But it would have been an enormous gap if you watched what happened before, whether he's up or down. Like Danny, if you don't know, basically, if you banned Zeri, like he had to go to things like Seraphine or play like a bad game of Sivir. Like that's an example of where luckily Thieves won. So in my opinion, it sort of ended well for everyone, and we didn't have to get upset about it. But mate, I remember watching those games and being like, bloody hell, this might just be EG winning. And basically, you can't say it wouldn't be because they got this specific player who wasn't their sub. I think that would have been a travesty if it happened, personally.
Yeah, I think hopefully the substitution rules will be revisited and that there won't be room to pull the emergency card on this kind of stuff. Because again, I don't really see that big of an issue because teams are unlikely to have academy teams that are paying like tier 1 players.
Yes.
So I think it's unlikely to be an issue. I could be wrong about that, but I do disagree. And like,
it's also very rare, let's be real, that like a top team that could afford it, like let's say Team Liquid, even if it is Hansama, it's still unlikely if they have like, Wild Turtle on the bench that they're really going to sub him in. Like they probably just stick with Hansama. So we'll see. It's obviously fairly unlikely,
I also just don't understand the purpose behind allowing this emergency substitute. And the reason why I say that is because if, as somebody who has been commissioner for several years, my ruling in this situation would be, here are your subs, use one of your subs, because you have to look at the stakes. The stakes were what? They already made worlds, okay? Yep. So you're not deciding a world slot with this. So really what you're saying is like, yeah, we're going to play a shitty best of 5 on the first day of the finals weekend in Chicago, and that may hurt some of our attendance or viewership. But at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do with the rules that were set out in terms of competitive integrity. And I would have just left it at that, because if there had been a world slot on the line, I may have allowed some kind of emergency substitution just to have like, I don't want to send, the wrong team to worlds, as it were. But for this event, like what effectively was EG being a pretty big underdog. And then also the fact that it can be abused, because in this situation, as we discussed on Competitive Edge earlier this week, it appeared and indeed was an upgrade over Danny based on his current performance. So with all of that information, I think you make a different decision.
On the topic of that, though, making the decision, let's get into that, though, Monty, because there's another thing. I found this part of the Jackie Felling Reddit statement to be absurd, where she actually tried to conflate, Monty, not telling you the details of Danny's mental health condition with not explaining why they made the decision. That's mental. No, I'm sorry. When you make that decision, you go in front of the press like Dana White would, and you go, questions, please. And then they ask you, like, this decision's been made. Obviously, it's not in the rule book. So how did you change it? Because, by the way, when I looked up, I'm almost certain this rule was in a different section. It was actually intended for the regular season. But okay, when you do all this, you would have to answer the hard questions, and you would have to dance your way around them, and you'd have to say how much you can say without saying too much. And you didn't have to do any of that. Instead, what you implied was like, Riot is a black box. Just trust that the man behind the curtain is not doing anything, and the Wizard of Oz will solve all your problems. Like, that's nonsense, because at that point in time, why even have rules? If they're just some god font in it, if it's like just fucking like Warhammer 40k and they're just psychos are just contacting the fucking, then just have the God Emperor choose it all. Make Jackie Felling the God Emperor, and she just chooses her win what you do. Because that's the reason. The reason they have to have a reason what you is that's what the precedent will be based on. That's what it will,
Yeah, I have a checkmate for you, Thorin, on this one when it comes to Riot. So in the spring of 2018, Team Liquid was playing in the finals, right? And we talked about Doublelift's unfortunate situation earlier. Now, if Riot was a compassionate company that wanted to hide some of the mental health issues that were being potentially suffered by these players. So there was no hiding. This is, of course, when Doublelift's mom was really tragically killed by his brother. Now, there was no hiding that, because that was just publicly available.
It was in the news and everything,
based on a murder. So, yeah, they couldn't suppress the actual news off of that, right? And obviously was, I personally thought Doublelift was going to play that final just because I know him and who he is.
Exactly.
But I totally would have understood if he didn't play that final. Those are obviously extraordinary circumstances.
And by the way, Doublelift is not a normal guy. That's also why. Like, Doublelift is a guy with the insane drive. He's just a guy where I agree, Monty. To me, Doublelift's career in life, whether he agrees now, his purpose was at one point in time, League of Legends, be the best he can be.
Yep.
And by the way, if you know his career, of course he wants to stack championships. He's been through the hard times where you get nothing. So yeah, I thought the same thing, mate.
But here's the checkmate, Thorin. If you are so concerned with preserving the mental health of your players, So there was a Netflix documentary that you guys can go watch, which is called 7 Days Out, it's a series that looks at big events that happen around the world. So in sports or concerts or these other things, that shows kind of the process of getting ready for these events, right? And they did one that year at that spring finals on the LCS, okay? And they had Doublelift mic'd on a lav mic under his shirt on a conversation he had with I think it was the hospital or the police about that incident, and then they put it on Netflix. So if you're concerned with the personal welfare of these players and of their mental health and well-being, isn't it? They literally have Doublelift mic'd on a phone talking about this incident with the authorities.
Essentially, if you don't get the premise, not only is that ghoulish, but they're actively exploiting it for fame and clicks or money.
For the Netflix show.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, oh, by the way, another thing I want to say.
If you really care about player mental health, like, what the fuck, Riot? Like, you can't oscillate between these ridiculous extremes all the time. Now, it's possible Doublelift gave permission for that to be used.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't.
It's the framing, like you say. Yeah,
yeah.
Even if he says yes, why is that relevant? Yeah, exactly. Because here's the thing: what's funny is all roads lead to Doublelift because it's the fucking LCS, isn't it? Spoiler bukes, and you don't really pick up those championships on Doublelift, do you? I just had to get that one in there. Jensen. No, whatever. No, here's the other point I was going to make. There's also exactly another fucking reference for Doublelift, isn't there? Because mate, I didn't go as hard as this at the time myself. Because you know what? I've made this point many times. Things like legal statuses, rules, and the reason why, if you're a fan and you wade in there with a strong opinion without knowing, you'll be a fool. It's because they're really complicated, and not only that, you have to know them as an abstract, like this is the principle, and then you have to know, like, but how is it applied? And then you have those famous things. There's the letter of the law, there's the spirit of the law. By the way, I would say the spirit of the law in the case of a rule for substitution is not that you could possibly upgrade your team strategy and player and get a better chance to win. That basically is exactly not what an emergency sub rule would be to enable in theory. But okay, difficult circumstances, it was a rookie, and that probably made it more unique. If people don't know, in 2017, if you remember, Doublelift had been in TSM now for 2 splits. He'd played in season 6. They lost to CLG in that first split where he had Yellow Star. Then they had that really super dominant best of 3 season, if you remember, where they lost the 1 series ever, and then they just won everything, and they won the championship. They went to Worlds and had like the failure, but the one where like they could have done pretty well, and they were in that super hard group. The next year, if you remember, Doublelift classically took the spring split off. Not like in Team Liquid where he just played shit. He actually didn't play at all. He became a streamer, and at the time, his whole thing was sort of like, I'll come back in summer, because supposedly at World and Green had like worked them all to death in the summer the previous one, and they felt burned out after Worlds. So famously what happened was TSM didn't need him. They actually played Wild Turtle. They played to topside with Hotzer, and they just won the league again. And here's what's hilarious. You're going to love this, Monty. Because I actually had sources in TSM. Very big sources at the time. Not only did they give me the story, we're going to, by the way, because at the time it was quid pro quo. By the way, Thorin, we're going to send Doublelift to Team Liquid. And I remember being like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then basically, it was even intimated to me by a certain source, like, I'm also going to do this because he thinks he should be the starter, no questions in summer. But since Wild Turtle just won, I think maybe we should make him compete for the spot. So the whole thing of Doublelift was sort of like, can I go and play in Team Liquid? Obviously going to go like, watch this motherfucker. You need me in TSM. So there was all this drama behind it, right? And basically what happened was Team Liquid was going to go into relegations and probably get kicked out of the league. They were a fucking terrible team. If you remember, season 7, this is after all the Breaking Point, Dardoch drama, Piglet drama. The team was an absolute mess. Those rookies were falling apart, and they were going to absolutely probably flush out of the LCS. But all of a sudden, TSM, the best team in the whole league, is able to lend a former MVP, by the way, a guy stacking championships for them, to their rival Team Liquid to keep them in the LCS. And if people don't know, this is the part that we didn't look into, because at the time people just said, oh, interesting move. What we didn't look into is, how could that be in the rules? Essentially, if you don't get it, guys, that would be like, because in football, obviously in the Premier League, you have relegation, right? Imagine if like the top team, so Man City, by the way, won the league. Imagine they have loads of mega players on the bench. Imagine if they could just lend like a world-class player to the bottom team and go, you can just stay in because you're my friend. Oh, the other teams at the bottom, fuck you. And then imagine the league goes, I'm going to allow this. You'd be like, what? You can't send like MVPs over. And the whole premise there was, again, it all rested on that fucking wording. It was like, it will be at Riot's discretion. and the judgment that they will make. And as I say, you've just made them a god emperor then. And unfortunately, if I have to tell you one thing about the history of Riot decision making, it is not only incredibly capricious when viewed at a large lens, but when viewed in minutiae, it clearly is biased towards certain people. Like, there's a reason why back in the day, Richard used to have that line. He called them the three kings. It was Reggie, it was Jack, and it was Steve, because they were like the three kings of the LCS. Whatever they wanted to do somehow just happened. Visa things, subs, whatever's good. Like, somehow every single rule just bent to their will. Meanwhile, you know this very well. If you were a smaller team, if you were a Renegades or maybe a Gravity, or so, mate, you just get bent over by the rules. In fact, you'll be fucked by the rules they make for them. And that was always the vibe, because if you don't get it, there wasn't
retroactively fucked.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
made new rules and then retroactively applied them.
Which also can't have happened, by the way. Like, well, the whole point, there wasn't franchising yet, but let's be real. Riot already understood, even without franchising, if you have any of these teams, Team Liquid, Cloud9 and TSM leave the league, whoever comes can't bring the same fan base, can't bring the same viewership, won't even have the same players, won't even have the money, by the way, to buy these players. They'd just be better than the 10th best or 8th best team. And so the implication of what Riot's decision was, it wasn't just like we love Team Liquid. It was like, we're just going to keep a big team in the league, the rich get richer and the poor get fucked. That was kind of the vibe. And I have to say, when I look back now, that should have been a way bigger deal. That was actually a fucking travesty. And even worse, he went back to TSM and won the next bloody split. That is so fucking mental. I can almost not process it when I think that. I can't believe, because at the time, here's the sad thing, I was the fan back then. I was like, but I like double lift. I hope Dardock does. You know what I mean? Like, I was the fan back then. Fucking hell. We were all plebs once, guys. We were all plebs.
I think, it was outrageous just to save Team Liquid from relegation. I mean, they could have made it back in. They could have been...
Also, spoiler, a few years later, in fact, the next year, Double went to Team Liquid and won the championship in a super team. Mate, Bill Belichick right now is applying to join the LCS. He's like, I don't know anything about League of Legends, but fucking brilliant. The coaches rigged the whole league. You know, they punish me for rigging the league. It's not a bad joke if you know the reference. Go on.
I mean, and to be fair, like, a lot of the LCS leadership has changed pretty dramatically during these periods. But the problem is that they never actually had an ethical core to begin with. Look, I welcome the new era of ethical LCS if it happens, but this isn't
happen because they keep doing this, Monty. Okay, yeah, we agree. We made a mistake. So starting now, well, after that, now, right, whatever, in season 13, like, God, it has to start eventually. By the way, dude, I always think this as well. How wild is it that League of Legends is in season 13? That's wild in itself. I never thought it would last this long. You know, it could have been a flash in the pan game, 4 or 5, it could be like StarCraft 2. But what's more wild is, bro, like, fuck all's changed. They've had such minor steps. And they've just, if people don't know, they've been like farming Brinks trucks of $1 billion into a fucking Scrooge McDuck vault in China somewhere. And they're not, we can't just change the rules. Like, come on, man.
And then also, once it goes into the 10-cent vault, then the Chinese government is just like dipping their hands in there to, pay for those Uyghur detention facilities.
Yeah, they're just like, of course. They're like, yes, we thank you, Riot and Frostgorin. What you have made us will be very well used. Send out the next Riot tanks. The irony of it being called Riot, I could never get over it itself. I know, fucking hell. That's really aged badly, guys. Really aged really badly.
But, look, if I hope this, like, the rules shift and we don't have to deal with this again. Clearly, there are some outmoded rules when it comes to the LCS where they need to figure out what the fuck is going on. These rules could have been made before the current commissioner was put into place, considering she started earlier this year. So let's look for an overhaul of the rule book in the offseason. I do think that the production quality has gotten a lot better in the LCS, as I said earlier. I really appreciated the fact that they, I complained about this in the spring. Like, look at how the LCK is doing things, bringing back all these old players, having these ceremonies. They did a really good job of that, I thought, this past weekend by bringing a bunch of the old players. The lead into it in terms of the content with, like, the top 5 roles, top 10 players, all of these things. Now, I may not have agreed with the lists, but it was nice that there was a buildup of content to this moment. And even though some of the things were misses, like, still don't really get the Jat or the Kobe Dash fighting video because it had nothing to do with esports and didn't hype me for playoffs in any way. It was well made, but sometimes you're going to have misses, right? I would say overall, this has been the best year of production, and especially this split has been the best split of production.
Here's the thing. Here's what my joke would have been. Well, I would have done. Listen, if you actually had balls, LCS, here's what you would have done. and if he wouldn't do this. He's not. Here's the thing: he can take a joke, but not like this. If you really wanted to do something LEC-esque, that would be so controversial, but people would fucking love you for it. But it would be so ballsy. The real scene you make is it's like a fight scene of chat, but against all the Team Liquid players. And he's like, you know, in the Matrix 2 when all those fucking like clones of Agent Smith come at Neo, he's just spinning around like that, just wrecking them all. And at the end they go like, right, Jack, I think he works here, done here. And he's like, that's right. And he puts like the headset back on, like, back where I belong. There you go. That would be edgy as fuck. All choreographed and everything. Like Alfari just missing, you know.
Well,
Santorin just sat in the corner.
You know, I hear Team Liquid has a lot of free time now, so maybe they'll actually use this idea going forward. My favorite was the Bjergsen tweet from this past weekend, where it's like, I'm at the Verizon booth. Basically, Bjergsen has now become a booth babe, and so I'm looking forward to seeing more of that at every stop at Worlds, like we talked about last time.
Here's the thing. Everyone get that tweet. It's on Bjergsen's account. I'll tell you how you make it really funny, right? Get the tweet, open it in picture viewer where you can zoom. What you do is this, right? You look at the picture, and this is how essentially, if you don't know, without going full like true romance, the face can't truly lie. It will always in some way hold attention. Because what you see is this. It looks like he's smiling. He's like, and then what you do is you zoom in on the face. It's like, eyes are still there. Cheeks are there. Keeps up. Just zoom in on the mouth. The mouth is like, it's literally that emoji of like the mouth is like, get me out of, I've been paid $2 million and I'm supposed to fucking be in the fight. I'm Bjergsen. Like, mate, that is internal screaming on that phone. I know, that's fucking mental. And by the way, just as an aside, I can't help myself. Like, the best part about this was not only did Jensen and Cloud9 beat all of the other teams, they beat all the teams that wouldn't sign Jensen. I can't. It's too much. It's too much. Because remember, it had everything, didn't it? Remember, Peter Dunn wins Spring. What was his banter? Would we have won 4-0 with Jensen? Nah, but you probably won the fucking summer split and go to Worlds, homie. What up? Hey! And then also, obviously you had fucking Team Liquid themselves. Jensen goes, you know what, Monty? I'm actually willing to swap to ADC and we can bring Bjergsen and do one of those caps perks type things. And they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Bring in Bjergsen. Yeah. What's up, Bjergsen? You want Hans Sama? Well, listen, Jensen, it's been real. Thanks for the championships. But you know what? What do? Carry half the games at Worlds? We're not even planning on going there. No, they obviously never said that. But, and then, like, finally, there was obviously Evil Geniuses themselves, wasn't there? No, the other one's TSM. Sorry, TSM could have obviously had him as well. Yes.
The other layer to this that you're forgetting too is the rogue layer where they win their first title without Inspired and Hansama. Both are not in the finals in NA. It's pretty good all around. Like all the storylines,
so perfect. Yeah,
very nice.
Yes. And by the way, I'll just say this right now, right? I'll actually tell you something interesting. Normally, I get really repulsed by fanboy behavior, but that's often just because it's so transparent that, like, the person hasn't followed the game very long, or they only care, like, the personality of a player, and they don't care, like, how good he is at the game. Like, those are the ones that trigger me. If you're actually genuinely just really enthusiastic, like, people will know, obviously, I probably at times go over the top about Rogue when they would fail in the past, right? And try to argue where it's like, maybe I'm pushing the line a little bit. But one thing it's weird is, on the one hand, I actually like that Azael is one of the only analysts who does try to consistently find, like, the positive in the LCS and try to find ways that, like, this guy is pretty good though. Because if you notice, I actually end up having to play devil's advocate sometimes for, like, the old Team Liquid in Season 9 because everyone's like, it is trash and they can't even play. I'm like, they've got fucking Bjergsen, Jensen, double, like, what are you talking, double lift and all that. Like, in that case, I will defend the best NA team. But mate, he had one of the craziest hot takes. It was obviously right after the finals. It's a hot take. He had a mental hot take, which is that literally, I'm not joking, when Cloud9 won that final, who remember coming into the final, like, how did they even get here? Like, even they're not playing that great. And then the final, obviously, was just a mess. It was just easy, right? He just, obviously, with a hot take of the stomp, he just tweeted something mad like that this was, like, the most hopeful he had ever been for NA at Worlds. Dude! They're sending EG and the 100 Thieves that just bombed it. No Team Liquid. And the team that won, we still don't even know how. Like, I'm still trying, like, Mason, the numbers. Like, I don't know how they won that. The joke is, even Jensen didn't really go hard with the shit talking because he sort of knows, like, I don't even know how I did this. Like, fuck, I played way better than this. Lost in the past. What am I doing? So, like, I thought that tweet was like, look. But then the joke was, someone showed though, Monty, because, right after they did the group draw, And then after, there's just a tweet from that just goes like, "Oh fuck!" It's like because like reality just set in instantly when he saw the group. Oh, I love it. I love it.
I mean,
I love it.
all you need to know, and I said this on the Jungle, which we recorded earlier, is that Jensen played 2 games of Old Clockman in the final, and like I don't know if you guys think that's going to work internationally when it never has before for NA. So it's not.
But here's the thing: was funny to see him win on Zillion while Bjergsen's watching in the arena. Not least because if people don't know, this is a straight fire callback that only I can do. There was a couple of years ago, because I kept trying to build up the rivalry, an interview with Bjergsen where he essentially said, like, I don't think about Jensen, actually, implying he's not a rival. And he even said, like, he's just sort of a role player. I'll tell you what, you were thinking about him when you were sat in a booth, watching him on a massive screen, dom me on everyone and win another championship, while you were just like, well, Doublelift, what have we got ourselves into now, well, pal? Like, come on, man. Like, that just looks so bad all around. Come on.
All right. I do want to finish up the conversation.
Yeah, go back into it.
I did appreciate the Jensen aside, and
right.
it's a teaser again. We have to give you a little sugar to make the medicine go down. So here's the last bit of the medicine, guys, which is not going to be popular amongst the Zoomers.
Which hit me with it.
Not popular amongst the Zoomers might be the subtitle for this show, Summoning Insight.
That could be the name of another show. Yeah, exactly. Could also be my subtitle.
So here's the final take. Look, we all agree mental health is important. However, being a professional player or a professional athlete or a professional competitor of any kind is an extremely high stress position. And unfortunately, while everyone else is going to go out there and tweet and say mental health is important because in their world, taking a few days as an accountant to yourself to reset your mentality doesn't cause most of the time huge problems for your job.
Of course.
Okay. Here's what causes huge problems for your job. You not participating in the playoffs of a competition. And regardless of what you think about Danny's decision, and for all we know, it could have been entirely justified. This is just a fact.
Oh, no, keep going.
Which is that it affects his value.
Yep.
It affects his value as a professional player. Because even if EG is supportive of him taking this break, they are not going to want a player who bails in the most important times of the year.
Oh, like, mate, you know what's wild, by the way? In a minute, we'll tease this into a talent topic, because that's the exact same topic. Dude, we're about to make the exact same thing in a minute in a talent discussion, aren't we? Because the exact same premise, which is that's the other issue I agree with. Optically, they have to say they agree with the decision, support it. But the problem is, if you don't understand how jobs work, your boss actually has a million ways he can fire you. Spoiler, you know how you could fire Danny? You just say you couldn't play the meta in the playoffs. You don't have to say anything about skipping this game. You don't know. There's actually a million ways you can do it. Now, sure, I will say that's going to look bad to fans, but mate, these orgs, I know they all say they love you. They even said, by the way, they even did the statement from the CEO, like, we're a family, we support each other. Spoiler, that will come back to haunt them really badly on some stuff in another game that I've got. Oh, it's beautiful. I love it when they get hoisted by their own petard. But yeah, basically, I agree with you, Monty. In reality, these teams, I mean, look how Team Liquid just did Jensen and won the championships for them. What they do is this. Oh, listen, Jensen, love you, mate. You're one of my best guys. Built the whole team. Bjergsen's available. Jensen, listen, our time together was special. Exactly. I wish you well as you move on. Like, come on. These guys absolutely. I know.
We're a family, but in my family, we kick people out.
That's like, you know what? Actually, I could get a better son from the orphanage. So, I mean, can you hit the bricks? I'll give you a bindle on that. You know,
nobody is actually talking about the reality of the situation, which is this. Here's the truth. In competition, you are only as good as your results. And if you are not there to get the results, it doesn't matter who the fuck you are on planet Earth, you will be cut.
Dude, you can be Soaz and they'll cut your ass. That happened. He had to go and play in the shit league. He doesn't even play professional CS at League of Legends anymore. You can be the greatest of all time and get cut, of course.
And yeah, absolutely, you should take care of yourself. And if you are going to be mentally worse as a result of competing, it is time for you to stop competing. And that is a totally legitimate decision that you can make. But if you're not cut out, no matter who you are, for this level of competition, and it is going to make your life worse than it is better. If you have in your hands, there's always going to be the stress. And what you're trying to do is balance the scales of, is this stress worth the glory of competition and winning? Is this stress worth the enjoyment of what I'm doing right now? And if it's not, fucking leave and do something else with your life. Please, like, I'm begging you. But if at the end of the day the glory is worth it, then you kind of just have to stick it out through these situations.
Yes.
So it's a tough situation, but it's a decision that all of these competitors make on a day-to-day basis. And the teams are also making this because they are trying to be as competitive as possible. Like, don't eat the bullshit from the teams that say we're a family. If they're running their team like that, they fucking suck at running a team, number one. And number two, they're probably not running their team that way. And honestly, given Cowrie's performance, I might just run with Cowrie at Worlds because guess what? EG's all about let's raise up the new player. Like, look at their decisions. Here's their messaging. And here's how we can tell in the future if they're bullshit. We love new players. We believe in our coaching staff's ability to bring players up and to their credit, EG has done this. They have been very good at slotting players in, giving them a gradual learning curve within the professional environment. And so in theory, they can do this with a lot of different players who show talent. Cowrie clearly showed talent in the finals or in the semifinals match that he played. Had played for a number of years in the Turkish league. And as I understand it, was performing very well in academy on an individual basis. So, if this is the guy who shows up, who flies back from Turkey and then shows up and performs well under the pressure of this semifinal, maybe this is the guy I want now. Only they're going to know the attitude in that situation. But I will say that subbing it at the last second and performing at that level is a really good indication for Cowrie. Like, really good. Like, you're like thumbs up.
Yeah.
So, you can take the break and the mental reset if you need it, but there's going to be a guy who's gunning for your spot. That's just fucking life. That is just fucking life, guys. And apparently it's illegal to say that. It's illegal to talk about this. But it's how competitive sports work.
It's also the thing I can't handle, Monty. I'm going to do a whole load of videos of this. It's time to stop having the same convos on talk shows. So, spoiler, one thing I can't handle about this is you're in the worst of the major regions. I actually genuinely, this is not a statement to be controversial, I do not think it makes any sense for NA to be a major region. I don't even think major regions should exist. I think it should just be seed slots. And I think that absolutely you should take some of them off NA. You should probably have 2 teams at the moment, or Morto in the plains. And that also ties into another point. That was probably the wackest nephew take, but it was so popular, Monty. It was practically ubiquitous. You'll have heard it yourself. It goes like this. I said that he actually had to sub out for the most important game of basically the entire season. Because, by the way, no one really cares about winning in spring. They really care if you win summer. Summer's where you become the champion. By the way, you're going for the #1 seed in summer. This is the wackest take of all. They go, well, they already made Worlds, Monty, so it doesn't really matter. No, they made planes. If you can't see the distinction, you are a fucking fool. Because this is the plains where one of the major region slots doesn't make it. That's the dumbest fucking parlay I've ever seen. If you were a fan, you were almost implying, like, once you get third place, who even cares at that point? People who want like top 16 guaranteed, people who maybe want to get lucky and don't get put in the hardest possible group. Because remember, you don't know this, but if you come out of plains, you can just get the nightmare group that already has the 3 really good teams in. That can happen.
And let's just talk about the play-ins bracket really quick and their situation.
It's wild, isn't it?
So they are in a group with Fnatic, Beyond, Detonation, Focus Me, Loud, and Chiefs Esports Club. So they're likely to make top 2.
They're going to season, yeah.
But I wouldn't say they're better than Fnatic. And so that means that they're going to be in second place in their group. And that means they don't automatically get to Worlds groups, which means they have to play in the little bracket, right? Which means, by the way, guys, that they are going to be.
They're going to face a murderer's row. Get ready. Like I said on Twitter, did you like my tweet when I said, dude, Group B of the plains is better than some of the old Worlds groups. Like, look at this fucking group. Go on.
So that means Group B. So they would be seed A2, which is going to play the winner of seed B3 versus B4. Now, DRX, RNG, and MAD are in the other group. So it's
RNG are the MSI champions, guys.
So RNG, no, they're not going to play RNG because they'll get out first place in their
hopefully.
Group. Yeah, right. Or DRX will.
Yeah.
Probably RNG. But the point is that they're going to have to play the 3rd place seed probably from that group, which is going to be either DRX or Mad Lions. Does EG win that? I don't know. Like,
probably
they don't.
Not.
Probably not. So it's not a great situation for them in play-ins.
Like I said,
unless they can beat Fnatic and get out #1 in their group.
Like, how insane is that playing group, though? Because, like I say, it's literally the reigning MSI champions. Then you've got Mad Lions, who at one point were considered probably the best Western team in the regular split. Then you've got DRX, who, look, actually, there you've got a bunch of players that they've still got Deft. They've still got like one of the greatest players of all time. Like, and then by the way, that's without all the teams that can just like win around. So like the point is, you're going to be playing one of those three. You can. There's no good team you can avoid. But I don't even really know. Like, except for winning the group, that's the only way you can avoid. Yeah.
You're also playing now. DRX is not a great team, but you're also playing DRX in an 80 meta where Deft has been popping the fuck off recently, and Zeka's been pretty good too. So if you're playing with the Danny Vulcan bot lane that was just dying 2v2 in lane during the group stage, and you think that's going to be your ticket to getting out of this scenario, I think you got another thing coming there. It's going to be really rough unless the meta changes pretty dramatically, which we have no reason to believe that it will.
By the way, since I teased it, let's do the talent topic and then let's go to the games and talk about LEC and the LCS and get all into the Gordia. You know the talent topic I'm referring to? We had a similar situation. Listen, I have one thing I would actually love to know, I don't know the guy, unfortunately, is if this is pure coincidence or if he himself saw what happened and thought, yeah, actually, you know what, I'm in a bad place. I think maybe I should take time off. But if you don't know Medic, who was one of, obviously, the premier casters of the LEC, as far as I know, he's at the States where they put him on the finals and everything. I assume if he went to Worlds, he'd be in playoff games, probably in the semi-finals or something.
I'm sure they invited him to Worlds to cast.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, the story is, he essentially said, I mean, here's the thing. I will actually say, I didn't check this myself, so I wondered if there's some fuckery. But actually, it does say in the first line, like, I was invited to Worlds or something. So to be fair, unless you're going to call him a liar, you have to just accept that at face value.
I'm sure he was.
So when he says he was invited to Worlds, but basically he has declined to go to Worlds entirely. And the reason why being like, something's got to him, some sort of mental strain or something. He's decided basically like it wouldn't, like essentially one of those that it wouldn't be good for anyone. Like, so I'll just stay home, which in itself, again, was one thing I found a bit strange by that. There's two parts here. One is that it's so long till Worlds though. Like it's a few weeks till the start of the planes, but I don't even know, like, would he have to do the planes? Like, I feel like if you're Medic, like I say, you're at least getting a quarter at Worlds. I feel like, couldn't you sort of like, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but couldn't there be like an option where like you stay out for 3 weeks, you come in on the last week and you do your one game? I was thinking that myself as well. And then obviously it spins into what will Riot do, but go on.
Here we go. So I think there's several aspects to this. One of them is that, first off, Captain Flowers, like, obviously took off last year as well from going to Worlds, which I think is understandable because when Worlds is in Asia, because they don't send casters to the live audience anymore to save money unless they are actually the casters inside the arena. So this year, the casters will be inside all of the venues, but the desk, I imagine, will probably still be in LA for at least play-ins and groups. I would think maybe at quarters and onwards, they send the desk. They'll probably send it for at least semis and finals, I would say, maybe not quarters. But for most of the tournament, like, the desk is in LA or Berlin, and then they will have the casters casting from LA or Berlin, which means that you have to travel for a really long time. And you don't even get the rush and the joy of like being in the arena, at least last year in Captain Flowers' case. So if you're a caster and you like feed off the energy of the crowd, you're basically just stuck in Berlin or LA, depending on the time zone. And you're going to be doing a lot of these casts in the middle of the night. And remember, I think last year, the NA casters just stayed in NA and the EU casters stayed in EU. And then they had the desk in EU, I think. Yeah, because of time zones. And then, so the NA casters were like up in the middle of the night. And I will tell you from having done desks like this, because I did this in 2014 with Riot, was I had to go from Asia to LA to do the desk in a Asian time zone. So I was literally working from like 11 at night till 8 in the morning. It was fucking horrible.
I've done this as well in CS. It's really bad. I did one in Germany and an event in China. I had to get to 2 in the morning. And basically, if you don't know, it's impossible to change your schedule. It doesn't matter how you could get sleep when you can't do it. It's impossible.
We would go have breakfast, have like gin and tonics at breakfast, pass out at noon, and then do it all again. And you live like this for weeks, by the way, because it takes 2 or 3 weeks for play-ins.
See, I won't insert the obvious joke, so business as usual for you then. Whatever. Go on. No, it's just for the image, smoking jacket and that. Well, let yourself up.
So it can be really hard. So like if Captain Flowers was going to stay and cast in LA, providing the same kind of performance when you're that tired and like your fucking sleep schedule's inverted,
it's really hard.
Is like, it's really difficult to be your best. And I found that. And I think especially as a play-by-play caster where you're like, I need to be in the arena, I need to have the crowd, I need to be in top form to like provide the hype. It sucks. So like, I don't blame Captain Flowers for not wanting to do that. Also, I think if you're stressed out, it just compounds that stress.
Of course.
In Medic's case, even though he would be casting at the venues, except maybe not Mexico City. Maybe they'll do it in Spanish in Mexico City. I don't know. But at least in groups, right? He wouldn't be doing play-ins most likely, but in groups in New York or in New York. Yeah, I think it's in New York. He'd be on site. They'll have the actual casters there. The desk will probably still be remote for that. So that's not an issue. But the other issue is that,
it's like the EG one.
You're traveling. You're traveling for a month, which is really, really stressful, by the way. Like, I've done the entirety of Worlds where I do 5 or 6 weeks on the road consecutively. It's fucking tough, especially because they move you around all the time. So any diet you have gets fucked up. Any workout regimen you have gets fucked up. Everything gets fucked up. You can't see anybody. You're just constantly working. And the other thing is that Riot these days, now when I was casting towards the end, they were offering higher rates for freelancers for international events because of all of this stress you have to go through, right? Like it's very different than just going home, doing your day, going home at the end of the day. But as I understand it right now, the casters get paid the same day rate to do like their normal league if you're a freelancer and as they do Worlds. So the ask is, here's all this additional stress. And yes, you get paid for some travel days, guys, but you don't get paid for every day that you're on the road. But for the broadcast days, you're not actually getting a premium. So what's the point of going?
All right, Team Liquid. No, obviously Monty froze there.
Yeah, you go. Much money.
Go back. You just said what's the point of going, and then it froze.
Yeah, what's the point of going? Like you're not. There's no bonus to going to Worlds, right? The bonus is travel a bunch. And if you've already done Worlds and you're not so interested in it, then why not just use it to take a break? Because you don't get any other breaks, guys. Their calendar runs like 10 months out of the year. It goes from January to fucking November. And on top of that, they're going to be in meetings for a bunch of, preparing for the next season, making all the changes they need. It's the same thing with Quickshot, why he took it off. Like, I think it's understandable. But I do think it's weird that these casters don't want to do these international events because the situations surrounding them are so bad. If Riot was offering them a lot of money or a more comfortable situation to do their job, don't you think they would want to go do the most hype
People
events?
don't know the reason why in Dota 2, there is always insane drama around who is invited to TI. It's because TI pays so much money out of the
so much money.
So as a result, the joke is you would never miss that unless it was you couldn't walk in the door, if you know what I mean. Everyone would say yes. So there's an elephant in the room here, Monty, and as usual, it's Riot. Here's the problem, right? Just like I've heard with certain other casters, maybe on the other side of the pond in NA, right? Riot, you know this very well. No matter what they say about the changed culture within the company, Riot is one of the most spiteful, sort of resentful companies of all time. They're incredibly entitled. And basically, Richard nailed it years ago. They're kind of like a cult. Like, to be on Riot's, in their good graces, you have to sort of bow and scrape. And you can be the best caster in the world who elevates their game, but they want you to sort of kiss their feet. Thank you so much, Mark Merrill, for letting a poor mortal like me even experience the grace of League of Legends, a truly innovative Dota clone game that never existed before until you thought the idea to rename, Podge or whatever. Like, so when they do that, right? In this scenario, if you don't know, again, Monty nailed it. Riot's going to go, we support you, Medic, 100% because you have mental health issues. And one thing we love is people feeling comfortable. And you're part of our family, the casting family. So see you next season, bro. But the problem is this, behind the scenes, I not only wouldn't put it past them, I've heard this has happened in the past. This could potentially have consequences. Yep. This could actually lead to him being limited or in some way subdued, or maybe they fuck with him in negotiation. I don't know what state of his contract. By the way, I haven't spoken to him about this. It's all speculation. But this is a situation where that's the problem in Riot games. If you don't know in CSGO, where you've seen me getting drama with TOs and pushback and people we can do that because it's an open circuit. I can play people against each other. I can wait until I raise my stock again in another company, then go back. If the only game in town is Riot, the LCS, LEC, all these leagues, and basically if they ever decide you're out or you're limited, I don't know how you get back. I don't know what you do because you're already doing your job.
You also can't negotiate with them, like I said, because they know what your day rate is for your normal league job, right? So your day-to-day league, and they can just say, we're not going to pay you more than that. We know what you get paid. So it's entirely unfair in terms of negotiation. It's like, here's Worlds, you'll do it for the same rate, or fuck you. And like, that's it. And because they moved a bunch of people to freelance, like it's hard to say no to that, even though objectively, like you're not actually getting compensated that much more for travel, being up in the middle of the night, overtime, any of these things that Worlds has. Um, some people feel like they have to take it just to stay in Riot's good graces. Some people have to take it because they only do 6 or 7 months out of the year on their regular league. So MSI and Worlds are very important parts of their income. That may go away if they don't do it. They may be punished, like you're saying, by Riot for not doing what Riot wants them to do, or not accepting their benevolence in terms of offering you these positions. It's tough. So I think it's a hard decision for casters to make to not take these events, and that's why I think it's so extraordinary that Captain Flowers and Medic didn't take them.
Why it's so bizarre there was these similar parallels in casting and then in the game. By the way, since we're on the topic, let's just do the LCS stuff first. Because what's funny is, since we've already teased the big topics we'll get into Cloud9 and Egypt, one angle that I actually thought went totally undervalued. Monty, I'm getting sick of people not even mean it's so whack. You know, when people think they can join in, like, I'm going to repeat a narrative and I'm joining in, this is my narrative. No. You know how you know who authors the narrative? Because he's looking ahead and thinking, what would come next? What would happen if this happened? And how would that narrative change? And I'm always able to get ahead of that, believe it or not. It's actually one of the reasons sometimes I make crazy guesses as to how things will go. So what I can't believe they didn't even prep for. Dude, how was the finals not about this? First of all, I would have gone with the whole Jensen was kicked out of all those. That's the most obvious one. He's got revenge, but is he going to win? But even better, for 100 Thieves, your whole narrative is this. The dynasty is about to be formed. The Papa Smithy fucking like reality got like, reality can be anything Papa wants it to be now. Like that was about to happen. He'd have made 3 finals in a row, and this would have been like 2 titles, all with the same 5 players, by the way. That's so incredibly rare. This actually, just like EG's revolutionized certain things about rookies, this would have revolutionized what general managing means, what the entire region's about, quite frankly. Now look, it's not like none of that's true because they lost the final, but I can't believe this wasn't even teed up. Dude, could you imagine like an NFL Super Bowl where the reigning champions are there and you're like, I won't bother teeing this up as like a dynasty or anything. I'll just see what happens in the game. Like they'd be all about that. They'd ram that down your throat.
Also, here's one. So spoilers. I didn't actually watch any of the pre-show stuff besides like the player intros because my internet is so garbage here that wasn't possible. But here's a question for you, Thorin. Did they tee up the Reaper versus Cloud9? Like,
I didn't see much of that. But as far as I know, everyone told me that wasn't even a factor. That, they didn't even they forgot Reaper was with Cloud9. Joke, by the way, as an aside, we'll get to this later. But my joke even was, I even said it on Twitter 'cause I'm a dick, right? If you're Jensen, remember that story? He told it on like, I can't remember, I think it was maybe on like the Crackdown night with Dom or something. He told the story, which not all the people didn't know, which is that they weren't just subbed in and out. Dude, when they made the finals, like fucking Reaper just like subbed in like golden glue and like contracts for a game or something mental, or something like that, or Svenskera. He subbed in those players and played some like insane comp that they never play. I can't remember the order, maybe it's Jensen who went to, but he made them play some comp they like never even wanted to do anything and just blew a finals game. So my joke was like, I wonder why he hasn't just subbed golden glue. Now like that was a real thing. That there had to be some connection there, I agree, but I don't think they actually teased that up at all, as far as I know.
I mean, I just think it's outrageous that you could have Reaper, the former coach of Cloud9, and then because remember he left Cloud9 and then was just sitting there for a split before he got picked up by 100 Thieves, and then he's been part of the catalyst that has gotten Reaper was part of the catalyst that has gotten them the success again. Like that's like I would just interview Reaper like. What the fuck? That's an amazing story. Yes. Like maybe he wants some revenge on Cloud9. Like, I don't know. It's a fun narrative to go with. And especially somebody who is you could make an argument that Reaper is the all-time great LCS coach. Like that's
mega.
Yeah, that's an argument you can.
I always used to say, if you do the thing of like, you obviously have to count the regular season as well. Dude, I think he is the best regular season coach ever. Look at how his teams always are the elite teams. They always get like the double-digit wins. Look, he might not win every playoffs. He's in every semi-final. Mate, this guy actually has an unbelievable like his floor is ridiculous for a coach.
Here's another one. Mithy's a coach of 100 Thieves now. Where was the Mithy versus Sven segment? Where was Mithy commenting on Sven's support play? What the fuck is that? Like,
by the way, I've got an angle for you because I don't know if you know this, but in classic pulp comic books of like the Golden Age, and Alan Moore likes to do this actually a lot, and stuff like Promethea and Tom Strong or whatever. What he'll do is each chapter, so each issue, has sort of like a witty way to say what happens. Like it's not just like Tom goes on an adventure. It's like, you know, a star is born, a universe collapses, and a new sun is seen. And you're like, oh, how's this going to? What metaphor is he weaving here? Right? How's that? So here's what I would say. This is how I would label this particular final of Cloud9 against 100 Thieves. It would basically be named after one of my favorite PC games, System Shock 2. See that? There you go. That's a freebie for you. I'll give you that one.
I wonder how many of our fans have actually played that game. It was a great game, though. Really good.
Banger.
All-time great game. There were big wins in terms of the production when it came to bringing out old players. But again, it's like, can we please focus on some of these new narratives? Like the fact that Reaper and Mythy are coaches of 100 Thieves, who also used to be coaches of C9, is interesting. The fact that Sven and Mythy used to play together and Sven has switched to Mythy's role and we don't see these narratives is great. Like, it's such low-hanging fruit. Why can't they grab the fucking fruit? They're like Tantalus, and the branch is just like kind of going out of reach. Except the joke is they're also the branch pulling it out of their own reach. So
yeah, it's just like what Riot's like this. Riot's a really tight shot, and it's like a branch they can't quite reach. When you pull out, it's their own arm pulling it back. Like, I can't get it. I wish I could get it for you. Oh shit! Can you see that shit? Like, oh, you know, right. Here's the thing, by the way, on that angle as well. Even though it was pure banter, and obviously he means he plays with a Berserker and blabber and stuff. What I love about Sven, because you're going to miss this, you're all going to think it was hilarious when he made that light-hearted joke about how all he did as support was like press E on Lulu and go, wow, go for it, guys. Whoa, shit, what are you doing? Like, as though that's all you do. But here's the thing you actually all missed. That's the true ADC arrogance. To think that, yeah, all you do is stand by me in a team fight and press E on me, you fuck. I carry the game. That is exactly what you want your ADC to think. I love that, like, even though he went to support, he just refuses to be broken. He just refuses to yield. I love it. I fucking love that shit. And also, spoiler, the other person, you're all going to think, this is a reach. How are they getting flamed? They were nowhere near the finals. It's TSM. Because here's what's mental. TSM could have had Jensen. Also, TSM used to have Sven. Sven left TSM. You know, he's won 3 championships since then. 3. One of them's at support. Mate, they have the craziest record of letting players go and them just getting better afterwards, isn't it? Like, Reggie really was just like, just, I don't know what he's doing. It's like it's like those sci-fi movies where he had some sort of like neck collar on them that that gives them the shock or something. Like, oh, it's inhibiting my powers. Like, yes, you'll never escape from my domain. Like, what the? Why did they leave and get better, mate? What's going on? And spoiler, I know they did have double lifting and they won that championship. Beyond that, though, the ADC position has been pretty bad. The joke now is TSM fans wistfully dream of a world where they're in a final and the ADC ease into a fucking bush. You know what I mean? They're not going to be in one for a while, are they?
I think in retrospect, we can say that Bjergsen was really the GM. Like, he was just a talent magnet. People were like, I get to play with Bjergsen. I'll do anything for that. Wow, TSM is really popular. But in terms of the actual performance of these rosters once they have them, it's very clear that this team was, you know, not doing too hot from the inside. Whereas, as you're saying, Cloud9 just seems to have an embarrassment of riches. It's like all these players they bring up, just kick out the season MVP, get this blabber guy in there and said, he's the MVP now. You can joke about the C9 systems all you want, but remember when I tweeted earlier this year that I didn't even have an opinion about it. I just said, hey, Cloud9 has a way they like to do things. They have these systems in place. Here's the way they like to run their practices. Here's the way they require, their players to work out. They have a schedule that they have to abide by. There are certain team meetings that everybody has to go to. Jack likes to do things a certain way. Everybody's like, well, why hire LS then? Well, we don't know if LS agreed to do these, or like there was some meeting in the middle. Clearly something wasn't working there. That's fine. Shit happens, right? But everybody's like, haha, the systems. Where are you motherfuckers now? They just won a title. They didn't even look good for most of the split. They made moves. They role swapped a guy, then role swapped him back, brought Jensen into this lineup, and then role swapped another guy to support. Clearly they're doing something right. Like, how many times do they have to win or do well at half the budget of the big team, in the most paid team in the league, and then keep on winning, keep on doing well at Worlds, make semifinals at Worlds? Is the only NA team that's ever done that. Been the team that makes it into quarterfinals the most times. They don't collapse internationally. They're doing something right, guys. Clearly.
Also, there's an obvious angle as well in that final. The prodigal son, you know that one from the Bible? He went away and tried to seek his riches elsewhere. Now he's back. You welcome him in, though. You embrace him again. You get the fatted calf out.
And he gets his first C9 title. When we look at the finals, though, it was just look. I didn't have a lot of faith after seeing 100 Thieves almost lose to EG once EG got a meta AD carry.
Yep.
Berserker was extremely good throughout these playoffs. He's clearly a level above. ADC is such an incredibly important role at the current time, can absolutely hard carry. But there were other things that I thought were very encouraging. Like, I love the fact that Fudge puts his dick out there and wants to play carry top laners. Jensen, he doesn't roam very much. He's not like he lanes okay, better than he did during the regular season. He's still like pretty good in team fights, but his laning phase and his map pressure are kind of lackluster. But it doesn't matter if you just get to
his first split back as well.
Well, you also just get to play old Clockman for free with no punishment, and then just press R on somebody in the late game and let Berserker or Blabber or Fudge carry these fights on these.
By the way,
Jax or Zeri or another hyper carry, right?
This is one thing I was talking about on my watch party because I can't handle it, mate. Think about this for a second. I've always said in the past, it was on Big Brains actually on my channel. I've always said in the past, I used to actually fight against the logic that all the EU fans would tell me, because EU would always generally outplace NA. I would always say, like, it doesn't mean that, like, all NA players and teams suck. Like, they're all bad. They just have things like different training methods, different amounts of money, different incentives, different concepts of, like, what's acceptable in discussion. All these other factors can potentially affect it, and less players, blah, blah. But I always used to say, if you have a look at the elite players in the region, like in the main 3 carry roles, etc., you'll always see people who are really good. Like, you'll see Bjergsen will have, like, a banging Syndra. Like, that could go head-to-head with a lot of, like, Asian players. You'll see, like, a top player that maybe he could actually stand up to some of these guys. You'll obviously see, like, a double lift, and you'll go, this guy could actually beat most Asian ADCs if he got the right one. So mainly in the past, in my opinion, it was things like the other players around them, the role players, or it was stylistic elements, like why do you just team fight? Why do you only ever go to NA RAM? But now, Monty, there is actually a way I can show you that the LCS is impossibly behind all the other major regions, right? How can there be a world where if you just play Gwen, Seraphine, or Zillion, nobody understands your ult, no matter how many times they play you? They just walk into the Seraphine and Gwen ults and get their shit pushed in. And Zillion, they chase him like they don't understand he can come back to life. They really blow everything. It was like watching, look, the only time that was comparable, wasn't a failure in the meta, was watching those Soraka games in LEC, which, like, they kept forgetting, like, it's going to give all the health back. So it was like, mate, these 3 champions, they're a joke. Like, Gwen will be played. The other 2 will never be played in international play at the Worlds. I don't think you'll see it from top teams.
I think that's a huge problem, and part of the problem is that NA teams are not very good about flanking or setting up for these team fights, which makes Seraph, if you are committing to basically ramming from one direction into each other over and over again and playing front to back team fights in every fucking team fight, well, guess what's going to be good? The Seraphine ult that hits 4 people, which wouldn't happen against a team that knows how to position versus Seraphine. Also, Seraphine would just get towered of and die. If you have a Zillion and you're just putting a one player out there and then they're able to revive and come back into this fight, well, there you go. There's going to be your advantage, but you're not getting punished in lane. Maybe target selection is not very disciplined from the team that you're playing in, so they can't stop DPS, or maybe they have a bunch of single target champions, so they're not actually providing a lot of other damage to the rest of the team. But these are really big issues that are going to come to Worlds. I mean, even if you look at EG's performance, now part of this might have been that players on EG felt like they had to make the big play because they were in a position where they had this new AD carry. But if you look at that, if you look at the way Jojo was playing Ahri, he would be like dashing through the front line on Ahri, trying to kill the back line instead of finding a good flank angle and then dying. And again, maybe that was just him saying like, well, somebody's got to do something, so here's what we're going to do. But a lot of the Asian teams, the Chinese and Korean teams, are going to hit you from 2 to 3 sides at the same time. They're going to have vision control that allows them to do that. They're going to be able to collapse all simultaneously perfectly around you. And then these picks are just not going to have any value. So it doesn't, the way that NA was won doesn't inspire you with great hope. And the way
you're Azael. If you are Azael, then technically it does for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, until you see the groups, until you realize.
Oh, spoiler, mate, there's another one I can't handle. The bad take after bad take. Mate, it was like watching a Double Lift podcast. Because, mate, you know when the fans looked at that group that 100 Thieves were in, and they were making the meme, they're so 200 IQ, they intentionally lost to get a better group. Their group Go and look at it, Monty.
I'm looking at it.
Who's in their group? Tell me.
The PCS #1 team, Gen G 100 Thieves.
Okay.
But the problem is that RNG is most likely going to end up in that
So
group.
you mean
based
they
on
could
seeding.
end up in a scenario, Monty, where the reigning MSI champions are in their group and the best
world's
team in
favorite.
the world. Spoiler, you don't get out of that. How's that good? That's worse. Like, the joke is, even though some of the others have, like, you know, more dangerous teams all over, it's like for example, Rogues looks dangerous until you realize, oh, they actually have a chance here. You know, they can win like a BO1 over DRX. So you know what I mean? Like, if you put it like that, suddenly, that's actually not a good group. You guys, you nephews have got to fucking level your takes up. You all hate Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless would murk you for takes, mate. At least he has like they're funny, they're interesting, he'll come with a take. You're just like, whatever doesn't make sense, I'll probably stays right. Like, give me a break. Come on.
I would also argue, you know, as we transition this into, we'll talk about LEC in a bit, but as we transition this into looking at Cloud9. So here's a wacky take for you. I think, so first off, I'm loving the Gumayushi versus Berserker narrative in that group, because clearly I would say I'm very interested to know if Berserker, having stayed on T1, would actually have made T1 a better team right now, because he's a more meta AD carry.
By the way, as an aside, did you see that moment where it was just production perfection, where it was just happenstance? At the moment that Berserker said that line, like, they asked him the first thing and he goes, yeah, it was boring. All the crowd started, like, got really silent and started booing a little bit, but it was because separately, apparently, like, on the other side of the crowd, like, they were trying to get an EG chant going, and people were thinking, like, oh, it's inappropriate, like, you know, the team's just... So, but the problem is the timing made it look like he was just like he just won the LCS chant. I love this guy, because I just like to imagine this, he was just giga chanted like this. He wins LCS and he goes, it's basically fucking boring, isn't it? It's just LCS. And they're like, we were about to say it was amazing. I know. I love it.
But honestly, like, I don't think that T1 is a terrible matchup for Cloud9.
No,
like, seriously, like, I actually think it's a pretty good matchup for Cloud9. I think if the meta continues to be the way it is, T1 is going to struggle. And as I've said on previous shows, I think T1 is a better matchup to JDG than they are to EDG. Viper is in such insane form right now that it's going to be really, really hard for T1 to overcome that bot gap, especially because, look, EDG is not without their flaws, right? But it's just, I hope T1 changes this, but the way they were playing in playoffs was like they were triaging bot lane, which then like made Zeus play weak side, and you're just not optimizing your strengths in that situation. So if they continue to do that, I think it may be somewhat challenging for them, for T1 in that matchup. And I think Cloud9 in their current form, at least I don't think they're going to win or get out of the group, but I do think that as far as group draws go, they have a relatively good matchup. I think the issue is going to be Flandre, because he was kind of inting a bit in playoffs, and obviously you don't want that into Zeus if they decide to play strong side top lane. But Viper's really fucking good right now. Yeah.
What are you talking about? He doesn't even spam Seraphine.
He plays all the meta. Like, you pick which is the best ADC going to World. It's either Viper or Ruler, and there are no other opinions.
Yeah. No, what's great is if you don't know, like, because everyone sadly just watches LCS, you don't realize, like, Viper versus, like you say, that would be an amazing matchup. The other one's like Knight and Chovy. Like, mate, there's so many bangers that are in this tournament. It's mental, innit?
Yeah, there are going to be some really good matchups. But I actually don't, like I said, I don't hate that group for Cloud9. I think that it would be a miracle for them to make it out. But I do think that as far as stylistic matchups and player for player strength goes, it's pretty good for Cloud9. Any group is going to be tough for them. Any group's going to be tough. Now, 100 Thieves, I think it's really, really rough, because the PCS team will always steal a game or two. That's just how it's worked. And, you know, it's between them and NA, who like makes it out into the bracket at MSI a lot of times. So I don't know anything about this team, but we can never really discount the PCS representatives historically. And as far as Gen G goes, like, they should be a lock. And Dom actually tweeted that he thinks Kai'Sa is going to come back into the meta, in which case, obviously, RNG is going to be stupid dangerous, because Gal is the best Kai'Sa player in the world, period.
The thing is, if people don't know, what annoys me the most is, I'm almost certain I ran simulations on this in the past. The real joke is this. You know, they created the whole system and unfortunately scuffed it in the seeding because, one, they pretend it's impossible, even with the eye test, to judge who's better and have a real seeding. And two, they want to pretend every region is equal until it's like all men are created equal before God until they live their life. Like, until you get to Worlds, who can know who's better? But I've always thought this, right? This is actually one of the most counterintuitive points ever. Fans think, right, if you keep the major regions separated in the different groups, as in China can only have one in each group, Korea can only have one in each, well then that gives actually Westerner the best chance ever, right? Because they can get they can only get one Chinese, one Korean, and then they have a chance, right? Maybe you don't get Europe and you have a chance if you're NA, right? Here's what they haven't thought through, Monty. Right? If you actually had real seeding, like if this was like StarCraft or CSGO or something, because you'd seed the teams like 1 to 16 in the main event, right? What you would do is, one, you could never get like number 1, number 2, or number 3 in the same group. That happens many times. That happened last time with FPX and Damwon. You could also, here's the dumbest thing. Do you know who would benefit automatically the most from real seeding, where 1 is in 16, 2 is in 15, 3 is in 14's group, 4 is in 15? If you did that, the 2 immediate seeds that gain a mad advantage, as in not like seed traditionally, but like from their regions, are the number 1 seed from EU and NA, because they would never get the group of death, Monty, because they'd be the top one in their region. So say they were like, even if we're being really cheeky and putting all the LPL teams against them, let's say that, like, for example, that Rogue and G2 are like 8th and 9th in the tournament. Well, then they don't have to worry about the group of death. It can't happen. But the problem is, and this is why, if you look, here's the real reason why NA sucks at Worlds. Because number 1 seed NA is nearly always the absolute death knell. The only one time I can remember they got, the 2 times they ever got the groups they could have got out of was actually both times double lift. It was the one in CLG in 2015 where Flash Wolves got out. And then there was the one, obviously, where like Misfits got out in Season 7. Aside from those, number 1 NA just constantly goes like, right, here's an amazing Chinese team in Korea. Fuck off. Like, that wouldn't happen actually if you know how seeding works. So it's actually even fucking the top Western teams. Well, spoiler, who's watching Worlds for the bad Western teams? Fucking hell. Or watching it for GAM or whatever.
Well, actually, I mean, the viewership for GAM might be higher than LCS, to be fair.
Well, then all you have to do is send Jackie Felling, or get the Jackie Felling of Vietnam and fly them to America. It's logical. There you go. I've solved it. Thanks to that guy who wrote that article for sure.
So, you know, I think the issue is this, at least in CSGO for you guys, a lot of the tournaments are seeded in this way, which is that the teams seed themselves. And even though that sounds weird, when you have consistent international competition throughout the year, basically you ask all of the teams attending the event to submit a like 1 through 16 ranking of their teams. And then what you do is you average all of the rankings. So it's actually the players who are scrimming, who are playing against these teams. The issue with League of Legends is you can't do that.
I'll give you one angle. The one last angle you have to add, because everyone's going to say, what if they make it and just say NA is the worst? You add in a control factor, which is, unless it's an insane conspiracy, obviously everyone's not going to say NA sucks, right? Again, as Monty says, you make an average, and whoever did a crazy outlier, like if overall we all agree that the best NA team, Cloud9, is like the 10th or 9th best team, then anyone who puts them 16th, their vote just gets thrown out, and actually makes it even more likely to be 8th or 9th, you know? Yeah, because this has been done in CSGO and it works. It just works. It actually does avoid, it avoids dickheads. In fact, the joke here is, by the way, they should probably do this in like the MVP vote. It's even a good concept, but they don't. They allow troll voting. It avoids people being dickheads, but it means that, like, bearing in mind only the teams can have a sense of how good they are relative or whatever, an eye test, you get like vaguely accurate seedings. And by the way, it even gives brilliant storylines, because imagine the teams had ranked FPX number 1 last Worlds. Now it's insane that they go out in the groups, because that means all the teams in the world were wrong.
But you can't do this in League of Legends because we don't have enough consistent international competition to know relative team strength for like on a reasonable level, right? So we don't have that. And also the problem is that even if you were to assemble experts, so the teams clearly don't know, because like which of the teams is watching all of the like if you're an LEC team, let's be real, you might be watching some of the best LPL and LCK teams. Are you watching LCS? Don't think so. If you're an LCK team, you're not fucking watching LCS. Like, that's ridiculous. I know they don't watch it. I've talked to pro players over there for years. So even the major regions couldn't seed. And then you even get into like who's watching PCS, who's watching.
By the way, the joke writes itself, but the reason why LCK players never watch is because if they tune in, they see like Jinx versus Misfortune, like, what? That's a replay or whatever.
What was this?
What year is this from? Yeah, exactly.
So the other problem is that even if you have experts who watch most of the most of the big games, which by the way isn't even the casters from the major regions, guys. Like, so the pool
they just play someone who does on camera.
Yeah, the pool. Yeah, that's true. Actually,
That's all I do. Come on,
and oftentimes, like, let's pretend you're an LCK or an LPL caster. Your games are going on at the same time as that other region's games, and there's too many games, even for streamers like Dom or Cadrol, to watch every single game. And these are guys who sometimes watch games for 16 hours a day, okay, on their streams.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're not watching PCS. They're not watching VCS. So there's literally no experts that can even reasonably rank these teams. So the players can't rank them. There are no experts. You actually cannot watch enough League of Legends. Like, it's physically impossible without, I don't know, not sleeping to do this. So we can't have good seeding that's based off of subjective lists. So even the people who are the most expert, there are too few of them. It's like, who watches the most VODs? Like Cadrol, Dom, and me? Maybe? Like, it's not a lot of people.
Emily Rand, maybe.
Emily, yeah, very few people. Very few people. So yeah, it would be very rough. And like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I watch VCS or PCS because I don't. So
here's the thing. I will say, just in hindsight, because I do like to do this, I'll just say one take that I think has aged quite poorly now that we've seen all the playoffs and we're going to Worlds is, do you remember that take that Inspired and Giorgio were like a top 5 2v2 in the world? Listen, it's cool to have opinions. It's cool to sort of start building a brand for yourself. But when you get wrecked as bad as that, just fuck off back to your little cubby hole.
He's been on the LCK broadcast too. So.
It's someone who are you referring to? That was just a general remark for anyone who's out there. Any nephews? Anyway,
Sometimes the takes are too hot, and we have to learn from them.
All right. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
You gotta, sometimes you're Icarus and you fly too close to the sun.
Exactly. Yes.
But you can always, unlike Icarus, you don't die, and you can always get your wings back and try again. Whatever. We've all had takes. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they don't. That was kind of ridiculous, but also, there's no such thing as bad publicity, and objectively, more people are talking about him than when he was right. Can put that out there.
By the way, that's even actually accurate in esports, as long as you don't get fired for it. Like, put it this way, I always think the silliest one of all time is, do you know the person who actually would be considered the Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless of League of Legends? It's very obvious. It's not all the ones they're going to say about it. It's you, it's me, it's LS, it's this guy. No, it's obvious who it is. And by the way, I don't take this as a diss. I actually think those guys are incredible showmen, and the way they and they have a lot. Here's the thing, they have such a unique brand that even though you think you know their take, it's always like slightly over, and also they're so consistent. It's like a character on TV. They really keep it really interesting, right? And so the person who obviously has done that is Freak. Freak used to just be a guy who's like game knowledge was his thing. He was this guy, like you say, he was the math guy. Now his whole thing is he always has a new take. You know it's going to be wild and sometimes maybe silly and laughable, risable, but you never quite know where it's coming from, do you? Like, you don't know it's going to pull out like the Rumble Jungle does. Fucking sucks. By the way, spoiler, like Xerxes just interviewed. He's like, it was amazing and fucking OP as shit. Like, that's it. But the point is, you're going to have to talk about him. And here's the thing, his career is anti-fragile. Everyone in the chat now is going like, by the way, you know what? Travis Gafford fits this as well. You're all going to go, Travis, he's not a real journalist. You're going to watch his interviews still. Loads of people are. I would, by the way, if you did an interesting one. These people have carved out their niche. And actually, it doesn't hurt their career when people think they're silly. It just keeps them in the consciousness. Like, the joke is, we say the LCS, who cares about LCS? We'll talk about Freak if he gives a take. That'll draw me right back in. Meanwhile, by the way, if Jack made some super nuanced point, I probably would forget about it when the show came along. It wouldn't be as instantly obvious to go. And so actually, those are all W's. You think you're mocking Freak. Every mockery you do on a show, especially on a show when he's not even on, that's a W. That's just a W for Freak, mate.
Yep. And, having those outrageous takes is often a great opportunity to have a really good discussion about something.
Oh, absolutely, yes. That's what I do in League of Legends, by the way. I say I am a layman, but I know shows are boring as fuck when you're like, so anyway, whatever you say, player's right. So I'll just be like, oh yeah, if you think you're that good, why do you do this to you? And they'll be like, how dare you? The player always gives a straight fire response, though, don't they? Like, explain why. And then I'm even myself like, oh shit, didn't know what I was talking about. Just remember what he said.
You're exposing the man behind the curtain, Thorin.
Oh, it's all right. Oh yeah, pull it back, please. Actually, I know everything. I am esports. Keep going. It's the way. That's where you know I'll never get a break. By the way, the idea I could essentially pull like a movie scene and just go, "I am esports," and everyone would go, "He's just meaning it literally." Like, no, give me a break. I can't get one. Kind of, it's mental. I
know. I think like with LEC, what was so funny, and we said this earlier this season, was the take we had is like, what made the razor cake of Rogue so delicious was that they were in first place. And so what we said is now the cake is shaped like a razor, but they not actually have razors in it. Because they didn't finish first place. They looked like they were struggling. Larssen had a really mediocre split by Larssen's standards. Seemed like it was going to be a down position for him. But they struggle their way through. They lose 3-0. They're losing with these great compositions. They've got the Renekton, Azir, Yumi, Zeri. They can't play them for shit. They're losing these games that good teams in the world would absolutely win with these compositions. They don't look like they can play towards the Renekton. Oh, well, here they are at the finals, just absolutely dominating, fixing all of those problems. Larssen's looking incredibly on form.
They got a fucking Renekton respect ban for Odoamne in like game 2 or something. I was like, what universe is this? Is this some like Warwick fucking Darian shit? He's only played it once.
Comp is playing out of his mind. There's like all three of the first bans are like AD carries. Yeah. So it just opens up Larssen's pool immensely. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing was great. Like I referred to earlier, like you get to see, you got to see everything you wanted. You got to see the aggro matchup, Kalista versus Draven. You got to see the weird matchup with Comp on Caitlyn. Then you got to see the scaling matchup of Zeri versus Sivir. Who wins all of them? It's fucking Comp. This guy was fucking trashed from Vitality, remember? And then he comes back, doesn't die in 3 games in the finals, wins the title, has an incredible performance, and the entire, supporting cast is doing very well. Malrang, God bless his insane little heart. I don't know why this guy plays this way.
Here's the thing, I've got the line for you.
He plays like a fucking psychopath.
This guy never met an angle for a gank he didn't like. That's why the genius of some of the comps were like they could sort of save him, bring him back out, like eat him, run him. Like that's actually what you want to do. Essentially, Malrang is like the deer that you leave. It runs in the pool. You've got to quickly get it out, but it's going to go right back in the pool again if you don't get like you can't stop him. He's just mad, isn't he? Because actually, you know what? There's 2 angles to this I want to hit quite hard. Because as a layman, what I tried to look for is like stylistically, how did the teams match up? How did someone get an advantage? Because I actually think a really underestimated part of this final, Monty, is because of the history of G2 stomping Rogue, of G2 stomping people, of Rogue getting stomped. Actually, you know what? Even though it was very satisfying for Odoamne to say that, this final wasn't a stomp, homie. Like, yes, game 1 was. The ends of game 2 and 3, the score will look like a scomp. Mate, game 2 and 3, they were at times, like in game 2, it looked like they were going to actually get outscaled. They were losing their agency in the game. They had to win some mad fights around the dragon. Game 3, by the way, they were constantly in positions where it's like, are they actually going to close this? Is the other team going to come back? So not only was it not a stomp, but to me, the most interesting aspect of it, I actually thought, was it was the way that actually they won Rogue. I have never seen them play like this, but I have an amazing contrast for you. It's a very quick one, but it's such a big picture, high resolution contrast outside of League of Legends. A lot of people are going to know it, even if they're not a fan of CSGO. You know, in CSGO, most famously, one of the all-time great leaders, like basically the greatest leader or player never to win a major until recently, was Karrigan, a very tenured leader, like Rogue, always like beating the same teams when it doesn't matter. Then when it matters, lose the semis, lose the final. And famously, he lost the Boston Major final. And in the Boston Major final, he did a Rogue. He sort of turtled a little bit, played a little bit too conservative, maybe didn't make the moves you should, and it allowed this plucky underdog to come in and win and take the title from him. Well, if you don't know, what made him winning the title this year, the Major, so epic is it wasn't just that he won by actually like embracing everything that had cost him before. Suddenly, it's like he knew, mate, I've had a million chances I bloom, so I'm just going to fucking go for it, mate. And he would call like mega ballsy strats. He would do stuff like in the last round, he would just push himself as a individual player. Individual leaders are supposed to be low fragging. He would just push and make a crazy play himself. Dude, that's what Rogue did here. Rogue has never played like this in a playoff series ever.
Never looked so clutch.
Think about the 2 things they did. One, they drafted crazy. They drafted stuff you know. They drafted Renekton for Odoamne, LeBlanc for Larssen against Caps, and then just give Cops, like, mate, that doesn't happen. You're not going to win that game. You smurfed that game, by the way. That was the Smurf. Kalista for Cop. That's the Smurf game, by the way, guys. Then you go to the comp. These are the guys that are supposed to be boring in the meta. They drafted one that, because of Spellbook, Monty, had 4 fucking teleports. It was like, you're playing an all-global one. That was mental already. And by the way, I don't know how they got that to pull that off. That almost looked like they didn't. And then the third one, again, was like, they can do anything in this meta. Like how, remember what we all said against Fnatic and G2, they are draft gapped. Dude, they just like reinvented the draft. And then I'll just say this, the Malrang angle, this is why I don't think Malrang is the MVP. But I do think that what Rogue did is why I think this is a new Rogue. And I think actually they can become a dynasty and they can win more championships. Here's why. Because when Malrang went in like a psycho, I've seen this guy play the whole time. He does that all the time. He always goes for those angles, but in the past, he does it, he flummoxes it, someone doesn't quite come in properly, or one person comes in, he dies, they get out, you're like, no, he bloody hinted it. So that's why, in my opinion, he can't be the MVP, because he would have gone for these players anyway. I've always said that about him. Well, but here's the thing, the follow-up was fucking insane in this fight. You see why I did the Carrigan analogy? The follow-up, dude, was like, they would even re-engage fights they were losing, because they were just like, fuck it, we're fighting. That's not Rogue. Dude, that's like G2. They did a G2 to G2. It was amazing. I could not believe the follow-up they gave Malrang because they just used everything. Save him, get him alive. Oh, well, it was incredible.
I mean, they gave him the space to make the play, and it's the synergy with Trimby as well. Sure. I think you really look at that game 3, and people are going to be raving about Malrang's Jarvan because it was amazing and legitimately so. But the team fight you're talking about in the mid lane was when he engaged and Caps Zonia'd on the Ahri, and then he was able to ult and then get a second Q. So he QEs, the flag is in the ground, right? He ults, waits out the Zonias, and then Qs 3 members onto the same flag, and then the wild growth knock up as well. So it was the way the team supported him, and that was great. But it's not just that, guys. Like, those flashy plays are wonderful to see. You see the synergy in terms of their team fighting. But you also, here's a different example of where you can see his synergy with Trimby. This was honestly one of the most insane ganks I've ever seen. Not because it was mechanically super
I think I know
good,
what to talk about here. Go on.
but because it was so fucking stupid that, like,
is this the one where he went back in with like 20 health or something?
No.
That, like, bro.
Okay,
all right.
Okay. So what happened was, so they get Herald, and you guys can watch this. So if you maybe during the break, guys, when I get home, I'll make another psychopathing. If you guys like the pathing video I did for Peanut, I could do one on this as well. So you just let me know in the comments or whatever, and if there's enough demand, I might make it. So what he does is he like gets Herald, and then he goes and he drops it in the bot lane, right? And so he's pulling people to the bottom side of the map, and you think, oh, well, maybe they're going to go get Dragon. So they don't get Dragon. It's the first Dragon of the game. And he like goes back and he starts doing his red, and the his bot lane recalls, and they're resetting. So they're taking the Dragon while he's doing this. So they're giving up this Dragon, and he just walks in for a lane gank. Okay. Like, knowing that Flacket on Zeri was going to be there, and he sits in the second brush, and he just, twiddling his thumbs. It's like, okay, well, they're doing Dragon. Just going to wait. And then the Lulu, Trimby, comes back into lane. And because he has lethal tempo, and he basically just ambushes this fucking Zeri and just starts stacking lethal tempo and just beating the shit out of her with his stick. And Trimby comes and like wild growths him and helps him get this kill. But it is so insane. Like, there's no reason that G2 would ever believe that he is in that brush, because why the fuck wouldn't they be contesting the Dragon? Why is he, this is a recall timing. Like, why the fuck is he here right now? And he just makes these plays. And I'm like, he's like thinking 2 steps ahead. I'm like, I've never seen a gank like this before. What the fuck is going on? Why is he here? How does he know he can do this? The fucking lethal tempo chem tank Jarvan, and like, he knows the limits of this. Like, I was really impressed by all of that. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
The problem is that as much as like those key storylines came out, I thought some of them did go a bit under the wire. Like, I'll give you an example. If you look at the 2 games I said where G2 had the chances, in those 2 games, actually, Caps was playing pretty well. Like, the Lissandra, she did get some pretty good moves off. Like, in those 2 games, he was playing well. But here's the thing. It's only like he was playing well. People don't want to give Larssen the credit, mate. He can't get it. He can literally outlane, outfight, even use champions, win both sides. It doesn't matter, mate. He's not allowed to ever win. People go, yeah, but Caps was still the best on G2. It's like, that's irrelevant. You're telling me he's the GOAT, and remember, he's in his prime, dude. You remember earlier in the split, the reason why some people says he has to be the MVP is because he's the best player in the whole LEC. Well, if I go against the best player in the whole LEC at my position, and I outplay him over 3 games, how the fuck do I not get credit? Because the most whack thing, and the Rogue players said this, and I agree with them. The most whack thing was this. It's the notion that if they lose, it's always that they're chokers. It's almost like an indictment of their character. They're just losers as humans. They don't deserve to win, and they shouldn't even have been there. But when Fnatic lose and G2 lose, they just had a bad game, guys. Like, it's not their fault. Like, what the fuck is that? What is, keep that energy, homie, that you had for me earlier? Like, what is it? By the way, I think like G2 played a little under par in the finals. And actually, I think the most interesting thing is I suspect, and the most not talked about part, I think something went really crazy in the draft there, mate. Like, I don't know what they were doing. Like, that looks like they got totally shocked or they weren't prepared for a pick because they just looked like they were spiraling back and forth. And so that one would angle. But beyond that, they actually put up a good fight. Like, they would have probably beaten another team on any other day. If Fnatic bet that, I think G2 wins. So I actually think you got to give it to Rogue, mate. I'm not joking. All 5 Rogue players played really well. Really well.
And it, like I said, it's also the different styles and the different ways in which they won. I mean, these LEC playoffs in the end of the season were so incredibly unpredictable because you don't expect teams to be able to fix their flaws that quickly. Like, Rogue fixed so many flaws in 1 week. And like, I don't know what the fuck happened. Like, I'm going to be very interested to talk to some of the Rogue players and the coaches and be like, how the hell did you guys like actually learn how to play with Renekton on a team as a team? Like, how did you figure out? I mean, I don't think this is rocket science, but like going from the double Seraphine game losses that they suffered to G2, and like it was clear they wanted to play more aggressive lanes. Like they wanted to play the Kalista, the Caitlyn, like these things that were going to bully the lanes a little bit more and create more pressure. It's like, so they made these switches, and then, but their drafts really forced weird bans. Like as soon as you see the Caitlyn, you're like, oh shit, Trimby's Lux. I remember how good that was a few weeks ago. Got to get rid of that now. But you can't shut them down with a 380 carry bans because here's another lane bully coming in that you may not have prepared for. So I think the drafts are really savvy from Rogue in this series, and they clearly really learned from those losses to G2. But it was not only those losses, and it wasn't just about G2. It was the way that Rogue had fixed their own flaws that were unforced errors on their own account, not knowing how to play out certain win conditions. And that, to me, that's what was the most impressive.
Funny thing is, I did not actually think Rogue would win. Now, look, technically, because I did bet on them to win against Fnatic and G2, on some level, I must have thought it was possible. Otherwise, what would be the point in making the bet? But I mainly bet for the odds. Like, I basically thought, so I sort of did think it was possible. I just thought it was way more likely than the odds said, because the odds were like, I think it was something like 2.6 for the Fnatic one, and it was like 3.4 for the final, which is absurd, by the way. That's like essentially you should have no chance at all, basically. So I thought that was mental. But one thing I did say was the only factor I could think of for Rogue was this: Trimby does have an enormous champion pool, and you saw in this series, look at what he's picking. He goes whatever you need, and that fucking Soraka was straight fire, mate. Like, Ellis isn't wrong to be banging on about that. Here's the reason why that champion is sick, because dude, it's because only a solo queue champion normally. Dude, pros don't know how to play against it. Not only do they same as with Zilean, they forget that it comes back to life, so they forget you get all the health back of the team fight. Similarly, have you noticed, Monty? Even in lane, they forget. You hit the Seraphine, you hit the fucking Soraka, it can't heal itself. In team fights, just kill the Soraka, it's over. But they all just do that thing where your brain is, remember, your brain from a billion games of League of Legends at Pro tells you, go onto the mid or the ADC if they're there, put everything on the mid or the ADC. So you're just letting the Soraka walk on the back, healing everyone up all the time. And the worst thing about that is, it's like having an entire team of fucking silences. You're thinking you're doing loads of damage, and then their health bars are just like, pushing all the way back, and you're like, what is this shit? Like, that's why if you get the right draft off, that is a mega powerful champion.
I mean, especially if the other team is just going to play front to back team fights versus you, it's really difficult to stop. And she does have, if you try and dive onto her, she has the silence field, so she can actually just shut down divers.
Silence is OP. It's not in the game very often, is it?
So what you have to do is you have to actually like hit her from multiple angles with multiple divers. So if you're not setting up your flanks effectively, it's just another one of those champions like Seraphine that can be really, really, really strong. And you're not going to really be able to punish her in the laning phase if you're playing other enchanters versus her. And we've seen it pop up here and there as like a Vi counter, but it turns out it's just like good against a bunch of the other champions that might be diving you in the back line as well. So you really do have to come from multiple angles and pick her off first, as you're saying, or have a lot of anti-heals. So it's really, really strong. Like, I think it's really strong. You can also do things like shut down big engage ultimates. From a distance, because like you can put her silence field down. Like Ornn's ult is extremely telegraphed. You can silence that. Poppy's ult is extremely telegraphed. You can
notice these are the champs dominating the games before you have the Soraka. Yeah.
So I think it is good. I think it is good right now.
What was the one angle? Oh yeah, there was also one other thing you have to remember, which is this event was in Sweden. And I'll tell you what, I was so thrilled to see an LEC legend from Sweden celebrated in his home country. And even Reckless was there to watch it. Shout out Larssen, true champion.
I did appreciate that they got Reckless there on the desk. I thought that was a nice touch for the home crowd. Also was quite good at doing the analysis.
He's also clearly a massive fan of those games where you don't just pick like 4 characters. You can spend all the time customizing the character, every single element of the look. You can add things. You can, because he's the guy who spends like the first hour on like the new MMO just making the character, and then he's like, oh, I've got to go to bed now. Fucking hell! He's going wild on that.
By his new haircut. I hadn't seen him in a while.
Also, by the way, even though they did hit it at the end because he's Greek, obviously, if you are like a person who knows the old school Febiven versus Reckless, it is wild that Reckless was in Sweden. He's not even in the LEC, and he watches a Greek AD carry carrying on Caitlyn and then doing fucking pentakills and shit in the finals, win the finals. Like, that's why someone did that great meme where it was like, it was Forgiven. It was like he walked and then had comp so he could run. It was like, dude, it was fire. That was actually a banger. That was a banger, mate.
That is good. That is good. Yeah, I think it was a really surprising final, especially for it to be 3-0, but Rogue dominated it. I was super happy to see Odo Omne won. I liked how they referenced on the cast, like, Odo Omne is like the player who's played the most games at LEC without winning a title. Like, he's just such a good dude too, that it was very heartwarming to finally see that dream realized. And for me, that was the best part. That was very satisfying for me personally, because you could really see how much it meant to him. And
you also got to see the real Odo Omne, because here's what you guys don't know. Yes, when it's on shores, he'll be a bit spicy and he'll make jokes because he knows you need that. But if you ever look, Odo Omne is the guy in interviews, especially in playoffs, who is just the most like professional. I'm being serious, as in he'll just say like, oh, he will always say the team that beat him is better and that they were fundamentally better. They deserved to win. Like, maybe we didn't deserve, we did problems, but that's because he's a pro. Because think about it, even in his role, he's the ultimate pro. He's the weak side guy, even though, spoiler, he can definitely play carry champions. Like, so this is the guy, right? Well, when he wins finally, Monty, well, now he's won. Now all of a sudden he can get the shackles off. So all he does is immediately just scream like, we got our fucking stomp. So it's like, I love that shit. I love that. That was like some Kevin Garnett, like, nothing's impossible. That was the shit. I loved it. The only problem with that interview, I'll just give him a quick tip for the production. You lingered on it too long. You got all the great lines out of him in the first few minutes, and then you just kept interviewing him on the... And you've just won. It's like, you just said all that like 4 times, mate. Like, at the end, he was almost just going like, I don't know what more I could say, really. Like, we've won, and yeah, we beat GT. Like, yeah, I've won. That they lingered on it. I think they were hoping like the moment would be more epic. By the way, though, spoiler, this is where the production... Whoever the producer is, he killed the end of this show. Because do you remember, they were obviously going to have, was it Law who was interviewing, or Shocks? One of the two was clearly going to throw Monty to end the show. But if you remember, Comp just shouted out like, shoo, or whatever, and then they just made that go to like I'm pretty sure this is the ending. That just quickly went to like the fucking... Whatever, you get the point. It went to the camera shot and it ended the show. Like, basically on that one, you don't redo it and go, right, now end the show. It's like, he ended the show, mate. When he just said there, you go on that's the end of the show. Put it up there. In the same way as, you know, back in the day, you might know this reference. There was like an old school IEM where they were supposed to wait and let like the trophy be presented. But if you remember, MC just ran up and fucking grabbed it at like Seabit, like, yeah. And obviously the producer's not like, well, get him back in position. Like, they just like, yeah, roll with it. Like, yeah, go, MC, great job. Like, follow him around. Of course, you just throw with it. So that producer killed that, because that could have gone really badly, obviously.
I love MC, what a showman. Yeah, so
it was the Polska Goron from Trimby. That's what people are saying. They're right. That was it. Sorry, I got it the wrong way around. Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. And then as for G2, I mean, I think you see talking about Flacket and Targamas. I think, look, guys, we're going to be real. I don't know if Flacket's going to be on G2 next year, if this is the guy that they really want on this roster. Oh, he knows something.
No, here's the problem, Monty. He's the greatest guy ever. They all love him. They're probably a family too. And here's the problem, Monty. This is semi-real, but it's mainly a fan narrative. They all believe that shit where, yes, listen, obviously one thing that turned this team around, by the way, it's not just that like they all have fun. That helps. But I also think it's the fact that like they got the weak side player. The problem is Reckless is a weak side player, but he also sort of has his own ideas about how much, or, you know, that I think there's a bit complicated, the negotiation there, in my opinion, if you look at his career. So the difference is fans are all going to say, what are you talking about? How could you replace Flackett? But here's the thing. This is where we're going to test in this offseason if Carlos is who I thought he was and who he's told me he is. Because he's told me He is Bill Belichick. He will fire you a year early instead of a year late. So I'm sorry, Monty. I have to say, when they didn't win that final there, I am thinking about, listen, there's a Neon, there's a fucking opposite. There's a lot of players I could go to here, you know.
Here's a list of 80 carries within the LEC that are better than Flackhead. Upset, Unforgiven, Comp, Neon. Who else? Who else we got? That's a lot of names already.
Kobe, arguably. Kobe, arguably.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. But the other thing is, like, we don't actually, I think it's interesting to know how good Flackett is, because you're not going to swing and hit on every single player.
Patrick, of course.
Oh, Patrick. Yeah, for sure. You're not gonna swing and hit on every player. And like, look, they hit a fucking home run with this Targamas guy.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Who the fuck knew who this guy was? And look at his
dude. Here's the thing. I'll tell you right now. Do you remember when Trimby first came in the LEC? And we were all sort of like, he's not really, you know, it seems like he hasn't really figured it out. This guy looks better in year 1 than Trimby. Imagine what he could be like in year 2. Targamas next year could be the shit, mate. He could be like an MVP.
Yeah. So I look at Targamas, and I don't know how much of this bot duo is Targamas versus Flackhead. They're going to have the information on how much each one is. Like, I don't know what their communication is like during the laning phase. Maybe it is Flackhead that's like microing Targamas and is making him look super good in multiple phases of the game. I think that's kind of unlikely, though, given the way 80 carries normally are. But there are so many different players that I think you could upgrade from. Neon's going to be a fucking free agent. You know?
That's wild. That means you get him for free if you don't understand it. It's like reckless. You get him for free. So you've got to really believe in your ADC to not pick him.
Like, if you're GMing this offseason, are you really sitting there and you're like, this free Neon guy is not going to be an upgrade over Flackhead? I would at least try it.
And if you don't, someone else is going to take him, and you're going to have to deal with those fucking backline fights again, mate. So he's going to be in the league, I hope.
Yeah, and I think like the problem with G2 is that when we've seen what happens when Caps is popping off, they can beat anybody in the world. We saw that at MSI, but you cannot live or die by Caps's pop-offs, because that's not a consistent way to win games. Like, sure, he did great this playoffs for the most part, but you need somebody else to be able to pick up the slack. And it was Broken Blade for a lot of this year. I don't think Broken Blade had the most amazing playoffs, but I do think that Broken Blade had moments of big time carries this year. Jankos also has been very solid throughout most of the year. People will be like, oh, he was kind of bad at the beginning of summer. Well, they were all kind of bad in the beginning of summer, or like middle of summer, I guess I should say. So you need something else. And the question is, it seems harsh because they won Spring Split and then they got to the finals of summer, but the expectations that Carlos has of G2 are winning everything all the time. And you have to pick which player is the best upgrade. And I think that there are so many players that you could upgrade this roster within LEC. It's not really true of top lane. Like, I don't think there's a large pool of players that are going to be big upgrades over Broken Blade, but I think there's like half the league is probably better than Flackett is.
Oh, by the way, I alluded to it earlier, and no one else is doing this, Monty, because since they all didn't expect Rogue could win, they're still processing that Rogue won. And part of them, if they're haters and are like, G2 and Fnatic just played worse, they're obviously going to imply it was a fluke, right? I'll just say this. That would be the most absurd fluke of all time, with how dominant they were and how every player played great, how they flexed the draft. That ain't a fluke. Like, it just doesn't seem like it could be because of how dominant they were, right? So as a result, all I've got to say is this. In this playoffs, they beat Mad Lions. Spoiler, they were already able to do that in some past seasons anyway, but they beat Mad Lions. Then they beat Fnatic. They've done that both times this year. Now they beat G2. They've even done it with the Reckless lineup last year, but this one in the final now. There is no final boss left. There is no mental block left. There is no playing conservative. There is no Larssen that plays barring major. He plays LeBlanc and shits on your face. I didn't even know he could play LeBlanc like that. He wasn't like that in the regular season. This guy was doing all the moves in and out, get all the fucking chains. Oh, it was mental. Like, what this showed me is this. These guys look unleashed, mate. So I actually think, for real, if they keep this exact same lineup, and I definitely would if I was the Rogue, they could be in all the next finals, mate. This could be a dynasty itself.
I have a question for you. Do you get the same vibe from this roster that you got from Astralis when they were like mentally
It's actually the analogy I've used, yes.
Okay.
Because this is why, if people don't know, everyone was like, you're an idiot. Why you keep believing in them? They only win regular season games because they don't matter. You idiot if you think those games don't matter. Those games matter incredibly. As you saw, they can qualify you to Worlds, motherfucker. They get you the choice in the draft, in the bracket as to who you play. They let you do stuff like, obviously, being like considered the best team. People have to ban stuff against you. So here's the problem I have, Monty. The reason I knew Astralis would break through eventually is because anytime it wasn't the pressure game, they were fucking amazing. They really were. So here's the logic. It isn't yes, who you are is also who you are in the playoffs, right? But that's clearly other factors are impinging. So what you have to think of is this: who they are on a normal day with no pressure. That's like the general level of the team. And mate, the general level of Rogue for years has been very good. It's been elite tier. The problem is they didn't get it done in the playoffs. Well, as I've learned a long time ago, if you ever make that breakthrough, now no one can stop you. And in fact, I'll add one last concept I brought from CSGO that people still don't seem to get because it sounds counterintuitive. The reason why, you remember when Doublelift was 1 million titles behind Bjergsen? Well, do you know how he overtook Bjergsen? Because when he wasn't in TSM anymore, if Doublelift wins, he catches up, but Bjergsen can't catch up. It's binary. Only one person can win. So every time, because that's why, by the way, you don't really judge resumes only off wins. You look at second places and thirds and you add it all together and you look at, but if you're only going on wins and titles, that's how you can quickly catch up. So here's the premise, guys. What if next year Rogue had a great job, and they won the next 2 titles? Spoiler, they'd have more than Mad Lions by then. They'd be getting up towards the Fanatics and you see what I mean? All of a sudden, this org already has been doing an amazing job. They've done a great job regular seasons. All they needed was actually a proper breakthrough. They sort of had it in the upper bracket in the spring. This time they've completely had it in the final. Like, look, yes, sometimes that can be a one-off, but I think that's progression, mate. I've seen them every playoffs get better. One thing I think's awesome about Larssen, I made this point before. This is why it's insane he played this LeBlanc. You know the most underrated thing about Larssen? I know this motherfucker must work on his game, and I know, like he said in my interview, that he hates losing. Because here's what he always does. Someone shits on him with a champion he ain't good on. He comes back weeks later, next playoff round, next split, and he's mastered it. So you remember, he got knocked out in that winners match in the first split where they were first by Nemesis on Lucian. Do you associate Lucian with Nemesis? You associate with fucking Larssen. It's like his pocket pick now. Then how about later on? The Ari shit on his face in spring, right? He's a pretty good Ari now, actually. You've seen some of his regular season games. And then now he has a LeBlanc in the finals. Motherfucker, that whole like he did barring contract, that's dead. That's dead with the Rogue thing. Let it go, because this could be the moment they break through. And if people don't know, it wasn't just Astralis in CSGO. The prime player was Device, and he was the same player that Larssen is. He's boring, too conservative, plays by the numbers, and can't get it done in the big game. Well, spoiler, they now talk about Device. He has the GOAT resume. They don't say he's the GOAT because the eye test says it's simple. He has the GOAT resume. He's won the most majors. He had the most MVPs at one point in time. Everything. So in that scenario, it's like, that's even why, by the way, I even told Device that back in the day. I said, when you're that type of player, they think are boring. You could only win by lifting the trophy. The other guy can win by having a good game and looking flashy and losing, because everyone goes, he's better than you. So that, I feel like Rogue's on the mission now, mate. I don't think this is a one-off personally.
It's not even that. It's also that, Larssen has the supporting cast to basically make him shine, right? In a world where they had Inspired, the game was dictated by Inspired's pathing and farming, right? In the Malrang universe, Malrang will actually sacrifice himself immensely in order to get successful ganks off to feed people. Like, he will wait forever. He will sit in a lane gank forever. He will gank for you at level 2, walk all the way across the map and lose 30 seconds to do that. We've had Odo Omne say on the show that Malrang is incredibly selfless at helping him out. And then you have the weak side king Odo Omne. So
do you know that story about Dom, by the way?
What? Oh, yeah. About Odo Omne and Dom and
the joke is, right, what happens on all of our shows, Crackdown, Best Down, it goes like this. I big up Rogue, and essentially Dom is Yanko in CSGO. Yanko never believed in Astralis. He goes like, they won't win. They're not the clutch team. It's the big bot. It's FaZe. It's SK. They'll win. Like Risky, Fnatic, and G2. The big boys and the champions that win, they'll always win. So whenever we do this, right, Dom was the one who noticed Malrang, one of the reasons he's worse in summer is he buys too many pink wards. He spends like 2,800 gold in one game instead of getting an item.
Yeah.
And so because he had, this is real, on Dom's core stream, he had Odoamne on and they pointed it out to Odoamne. And Odoamne for real told Malrang. So the joke is, Dom accidentally fixed Rogue. He actually I don't know, he made all the razors blunt or something. It's meant to just look like cake decoration at that point. Dude, he did it. He actually took the edge off.
Well, I mean, but that's who Malrang is, right? As a player, like he would spend 1,800 gold in one game on pink boards because he's trying to play like supportive for his lane. Like that's what he thinks his job is. The point of it is like that is a hilarious story. But the point of it is like Larssen has all of the tools to be a mega carry and to be propped up by all of these circumstances. And so if this is the time where he comes into his own, he'll be very scary because not only is he individually good, but his team is making him better.
And all I'm going to say is this. It was the G2 dynasty. Humanoid, obviously, maybe he's like with Fnatic and Mad Lions. You had all these other great teams there and they were ruling the league. It was always going to be them swapping it. But then along came this boring mage player in the mid lane that everyone said wasn't that good. And, who cares about this guy? And then somehow he broke the dynasty. I told you he is the heir to Froggen. All I'm going to say is, how did that fucking pay off? I did get this. I was originally told that analogy before he ever played in LEC by veteran. But I have to say, I've kept it going since because, mate, I think it's legit. Look, the problem is Froggen did all, because he played before LCS, he got through a lot of this stuff in his early career. Obviously, he was the off-season, the open circuit and all that. But, like, now that he is actually not a choker, I actually think they have similarities as players, mate. Because the thing is, it's not that they're not ballsy. They're just the calculated guy. They're the guy who just wants to do the maximum DPS in a fight. They're not the guys going, like, I'll go for the all-in, like, play, like the Caps Silas play,
The funny mental image of all of this is like it's like Froggen Pokemon evolved into Larssen. So it's like different stages of the Pokemon evolution, right? It's Froggen was like the mid-tier level where it was like the master of the control mage. And now we have Larssen, the evolved highest tier version who changed from just the control mage player to absolutely everything. I think that's the good analogy.
There you go. All right. By the way, as an aside, let's just briefly touch on Fnatic then. So obviously, it doesn't matter at this point. I will say this. I don't even have many disses for Fnatic generally, mate. Look, if we banged on already on pastry, the super team angle was stupid. But even so, by the way, they still got to Worlds. That's fine. They still came third. They still made it past Mad Lions. Like, I think in general, I agree with what you said earlier. I think the things that Fnatic improved on in the playoffs and how they structured the draft and how they figured out how to use players and who to funnel through, that was all very good signs. I still wouldn't keep all 5 players unless they do some insane Worlds run, but I actually think in the end, they didn't redeem themselves because they got in the playoffs and because they had enough chance to play the series, they did sort of make it so it wasn't a travesty at the end. It would have been if they hadn't made the playoffs and they'd gone out and didn't make Worlds, but in the end, I think it was actually okay. But I will say though, mate, the one player I think is the hardest off-season ever for Fnatic in terms of Hylissang. Because, mate, in the spring, he was an MVP candidate. In the summer, I think he actually, like... Humanoid was bad in the regular season. Hylissang just continued even in the playoffs, mate. Like, I thought some of these games were mad egregious. So, like, I don't know how you let him go because you have to sort of gamble and give him another split, I think. But it's hard because if he does that again, how can I win?
Well... I think the thing when you evaluate Fnatic is that for 24 hours it looked really bad after they got bodied by Rogue. But then when Rogue 3-0 G2, you're like,
true.
They just ran into the Rogue buzzsaw this weekend. True. And it was Rogue really leveling up their own play. So I don't think it was, now that we have the benefit of hindsight, I don't think it was as bad as it looked after the losers bracket final.
All the nephews are going to go, it's because he's playing enchanters. Wait a minute, Bomb. You said if Larssen can't play the non-mages, he sucks at mid lane. So you're saying, like, the greatest support ever, he could only play, like, Ricard, Thresh, Pyke. Like, shut the fuck up. Which is it? Is he the greatest or not? Because I've actually always thought Hylissang was slightly overrated in that sense. Not that he's not the best, but they make him sound like he was the perfect support. He's like a super, I wouldn't say one dimension, he's a super, like, telegraphed support in a sense. Like, he's going to go for all that crazy shit. He has to be on his champs.
Look, Hylissang, you just have to take the int with the carry.
Yes,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
just how it is. So
Yep.
I don't think you kick him. Like, it's just what you live or die by him, basically. And the
Yeah.
upside is worth the downside, in my opinion.
It's the same as what Rogue does with Malrang. Exactly. That's why I told Abner he's jungle Hylissang. You just live and die with it. Look, sometimes he's going to go and you go, I don't think we should go into this, but fuck, we got to, haven't we? It's amazing. I know.
So I look at Fnatic, and the same problem persisted with Razork and Humanoid, and a lot of Fnatic's run was Razork playing fucking amazing. Yep. And it's like the Caps thing. It's like, okay, are we really going to hope that Razork just has like the best playoffs ever, and he's going to do it every single week of the playoffs and have that same level? Because when we saw the dip in level where he wasn't so amazing this last weekend, well, somebody else had to step up, and nobody did. So I think...
So I can't lie. Everyone loves like people who do ballsy plays. And obviously the classic ones are like Hylissang. Obviously people would say Blabber. All I'm going to say is this. If you watched Blabber and you're like, I love it, he's a psycho, how could you not like Malrang? Like some of the plays he made was so chadded, it was unreal. I thought you were going to reference one earlier. I'm trying to remember, right? I can't remember who did what here, but there was a fight. It was on like the top side brush on the right side of the map, like where you go into mid lane and between the two towers on their side, and he just like comes over the wall from the blue buff with like, I swear he had like 20 health, and he just goes into them on like a jar. Do you remember the fight I'm talking about? Does anyone remember this? Like, he did it, to be fair. I think this was maybe even the Soraka game or something where they had like, a way to like heal him or whatever. But like the joke is you just get one shot instantly if you're any normal human. But he's just Malrang, so he's like, I see the angle, I'm going in, like fucking mate, that's the problem. You also remember as a team, it's all well and good saying I'd love to play with Hylissang. You wouldn't have the balls to go in when he goes in. If you go in on that, you're just literally saying, look, mate, I might in 3 hours be talking to you going, well, you tried, but you did sort of fuck that game up for us. But I'm gonna have to live on it, aren't I? Exactly. I'm just gonna have to go out on my sword with this guy's going in like that because we can't let him die. I know it was wild, mate. I'd have to find that clip. It was so good.
I was literally watching that game 3, the VOD.
Oh, it was the Tom Kench game, apparently. Yeah.
Oh, I was watching the VOD of the game 3 with Malrang on Jarvan, and I was like last night, and I was like, I just was sitting there, and I just said to my wife, I was like, I love this guy. This fucking insane, Korean jungler that Rogue has. I was like, he is so fucking crazy. He plays like nobody else in the world. I don't know what he's gonna do. I don't know if he knows what he's gonna do or why it's going to work, but it is fucking amazing to watch him play.
Here's the joke, though. I have a good joke for you because I think this is real analysis and also a good joke, right? If you were watching the two different finals and you were T1 or you were a top Korean team, here's what you thought. You watched Berserker and you were like, you know what? I might actually, maybe I go for him actually. That could be an interesting move. Like, he looks like he's got the pieces. If we put him in a Korean team, you play around him, that could be good. They're watching Malrang and they're like, do they not know how jungle works in Europe? What the fuck is he doing? Because that's like the most anti-Korean jungle style I've ever seen. It's mad, isn't it? I can't even believe a Korean plays like that. It's fucking bonkers, isn't it? It's so LPL. He is like MLXG or something. I know I can't handle it.
It's also funny, this like considering his career on some of these like bottom Korean rosters, and then being like, I don't even know why he was the backup to Canyon, because if he ever had to sub in for Canyon, like, he plays opposite style. Like, how would the rest of his team like adapt to that? He's like Bizarro Canyon. So I don't even know why he was on that roster. It doesn't make any sense for a substitute player. If you're like, well, if this guy can't play the game for whatever reason, shouldn't we get somebody who's like kind of similar? Nope, not similar at all. Literally the opposite player. So it's funny. It's very funny. What's
weird is I've heard EG wants to sign Malrang to play on their academy squad next split. That's fire if you think it through. Just think it through. That's fire. Just in case Trundle's not in the meta or whatever. Keep going. It's actually fire if you think about it. Well, yeah, it's all good.
So yeah, I think that probably wraps up our LEC conversation. We should talk a little bit about group draw and then do some
go on. The thing is, though, what we need is, do you have it somewhere? You know the graphic that tells you, like, if all the top teams make it out of the play-ins, here's what the group would look like. So that's like the better projection to look at, isn't it? Not just the three.
Yeah, it would be. I have it written down.
Because am I the only one who doesn't get this? Like, look, here's the problem. There's two angles to it. The old group draw, when they had the original 3 seeds from each major region, was ruined by the fact that you had to be in the different region, the different group from your region. So it meant the group draw wasn't a group draw. Like, they were like, and the group is, who's going to be with EDG? It's RNG. But of course, RNG moves over to Group C. And so actually it made the group draw boring. It was just like as soon as the first few was set, there wasn't actually a group draw. It could only be these two. So everyone now's praising it, Monty, like, oh, it's a lot more exciting. But it's got no closure. Like, you're supposed to judge the group off 3 teams and go, oh, what would that? How the fuck can I know? Especially because in the play-ins are RNG, fucking the top teams. So I think now the group draw is really bizarre to me. I don't know what the vibe is. I find it just like, I find it boring personally. I don't think it's that great, mate.
There's only certain, like, so many scenarios that can happen, right? And if here's the thing, like, it's like, I wouldn't say that EG is a lock to get out. I would say it's like 50-50 whether they or Mad Lions get out, depending on form at Worlds. Especially given EG's like ADC problems, it's certainly not as one-sided as I think it would be. And the way the play-ins worked is that the most likely scenario is EG and Fnatic playing each other, or EG and Mad Lions playing each other for that last slot. So if that's the case, but if EG gets out, they would be in Group B. So it would go like this. Fnatic would have to be in Group A. So that would make the group C9, T1, EDG, and Fnatic, which would be hilarious. Group B would be, EG would go into that group. It would be JDG, G2, Damwon, Kia, and EG. Also, I think no chance EG gets out of that group. Group C would be DRX, so it'd be Rogue, Top, Gamania, Bears, and DRX. Now, Rogue might actually be able to get out of that group.
Because in your world, they can win a game off Rogue and a game off DRX, right?
Well, DRX is not great, so Rogue and Top might be able to get out of that group, I think. And then Group D would be RNG going in with Gen.G, the Flying Oysters, crazy name, and 100 Thieves.
The only problem I have, though, is I'll just say it as simply as I can. Let me think how you frame this. Who actually gives a flying fuck about some of these groups at this point in time? Like, this is the problem Riot's done. They've done what I want.
Why did you have to think about that?
No, because I was trying to think how I'm going to frame this, actually, like what I'm saying. Basically, here's the problem. I actually think they've made the tournament better by having guaranteed 4 from LCK, 4 from LPL. That's amazing, but it means there's actually very little excitement in the group. Before, you had to just remember, one group doesn't have a Chinese team in, one group didn't have a Korean team in it. If you got that group, you had your chance. Or if you got the group, as like C9 did very often, where it's like either you get the worst LPL team, you can beat them, and T1, or you get just T1, and then you get like, you know, fucking an EU team. Like, you can win those games. Nowadays, if you ever look at the groups, no one's supposed to get out. You can, but nobody from the West is supposed to get out. Nobody.
But you see the fatal flaw, sir, which is this. It creates false hope for the Western fans.
I forgot about the false hope. Okay.
Because best of ones, here's the thing. It's really hard to go 6-0 in groups. It almost never happens. It really actually very rarely happens. And world champion teams often finish second in their group at like 4-2 or whatever. And so you get the false hope of these tiebreakers or like, oh my God, look at this upset. But when you're playing, like, especially in the second round robin where you're playing all your games on one day, it's super easy just to get trap gamed in a best of one. So most teams do not, even the best teams in the world, don't go 6-0 in groups.
By the way, I'm actually just, I normally never do this, but I tried for one episode to have Twitch chat up, but I'm going to close it down now because when I made that point, you know, all Twitch chat does is just not listen to what you say. They hear like words you say and then just, I disagree for this reason. So what they all said there, Monty, is know what you're talking about. Like, if EG's in that group, then actually Rogue is supposed to get out. Why does EG have to be in that group? Did you hear what Monty just said beforehand? It could be all those fucking killer Asian teams, but you're so stupid, you don't know. So as a result, there's a world where that's a nightmare, isn't it? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I honestly think Rogue does have a shot against DRX.
A shot, but they're not favourites. They're making out, they're meant to get out. Like, mate, you're the motherfuckers a minute ago said they were going to finish third. Why are you whiplash? I can't handle it. Mate, the whiplash on my neck, I need to fucking pay out or something, danger money.
I don't know.
I can't handle Twitch chats for idiots, mate.
I really hate DRX, so maybe I do think Rogue are favorite.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The question, here's the ultimate question, because everyone's doing that thing where they do MMA math, like, well, DRX sucked in Korea. Good job they're not playing against Koreans and you fucking idiots. So when they play against Western teams, you said it earlier, if this is the same meta, Deft is going to fucking smurf. You could literally protect the Deft and you will have a chance to win against Western teams. Remember what we were talking about? By the way, EG can't even play the meta. Like, if you go against, let's say, like, Mad Lions, Unforgiven's a fucking rookie, homie. A rookie. If you go against like the Fnatic bot lane, is Hillasang inting? Like, you know what I mean? In these scenarios, like DRX, like they're a team people are going to dismiss immediately. I don't think you can. It's like earlier on. I also think the other team that are going to get mad slapped on is EDG. EDG has problems with Flander, great. By the way, no one in the West is a great top laner right now. I don't know why that's even a problem. And the rest of the team's still bangers. They've got Scout still good, as you said. Obviously, fucking Viper is a monster. Mako's still like these teams only look bad compared to their regions. In these groups, they're not playing their regions entirely. They're messing up everyone in the West, looking awesome.
Yeah, you also have to have very specific game plans in order to exploit top teams' weaknesses. Like, yes, there are teams that have stylistic weaknesses that are good teams, but especially in LPL, the competition's so fierce that they have to come in with very specific game plans in order to exploit these weaknesses. If you just, if you don't punish RNG during the laning phase, guess what's going to happen to you? If you are here's the thing, RNG actually is going to match up really well against a lot of these Western teams, because if you're not proactive, they will shit on you in the late game, right? You have to get those edges early against them. And then, we've seen it, but it's like top esports. Yeah, they can get these huge leads, but sometimes they're just going to throw multiple times to JDG with these advantages. But you have to be able to find those moments where they're mispositioned on the map and take advantage of them, which is not the easiest thing to do, right? You have to know what to look for and to really pull the trigger. And that's what JDG is super good at, is they just pull the trigger, right? If they see something, it can be a screen away, but they're going after that ass. You know what I mean? So a lot of,
which is actually why Rogue is also going to be cool. They did that in the finals. Yeah. Dude, play like that and you can have a chance.
Yeah. And T1, for example, yes, they are weak in terms of their bot lane right now, but also you have to deal with Faker, who is super good at making plays on the map. And you have to play a very strong vision game against T1, because they'll just hide. They're just they're like guerrilla warfare right now. They know they're outmatched. They know they're losing, and yet they're going to control vision, and they're going to hide in the one brush you don't think they're in, and then they're going to just fuck you up. Or they're going to control vision and just sneak in on that Baron, and all of a sudden Baron's going to be gone before you can react to it. They're a very sneaky team. And yes, they have their flaws, but you also have to account for their strengths, and they are really good at exercising their strengths.
Oh, right, I see. They're a very sneaky team because the ADC is overrated as fuck.
There you go.
That's just an old school bit of gumbo for you. Don't worry about that, boys. I never let the old fucking fires stop burning. Don't worry about that.
I am really hyped to see Gumayushi versus Berserker in that group, though. That's gonna be super fun.
For sure. Not least because I actually do get that vibe, by the way, that if Berserker does really well, the problem is it's going to be hard to keep it in NA, just because it's mate, if the big dogs come calling, that's the sort of player that if he really shows it at Worlds,
T1's yeah. Hey, Berserker, I got the bucks. Yeah. What does Jack care? Jack will sell him to T1.
Oh, and also remember, you do here, Berserker, right? Someone get this VOD to him. What you do is this, Berserker. Don't go in there and be like, Jack, you're a businessman. Understand, it's a big opportunity. No. What you do is you go in and you go, Uncle Jack, no, can I talk to you? I know you're busy. He's like, oh, come on in. Yes, I've got great performance. And, I hope everything's good for you here at Cloud9. Are the systems suiting you well? Are you enjoying them? Are you? Oh, great. Excellent. Yeah. We got rid of the guy with the... Yep. That's all okay. Cool. Summit's gone. He can't hurt you anymore. The bad memories with Renekton are gone. Okay. I'm sure everything's fine. So did you enjoy this year? And he goes, yeah, I did. That's not what I wanted to talk to you about, though. He goes, oh, okay. Well, it sounds very serious. And he goes, oh, Uncle Jack... since we're a family in Cloud9, I know you'd never want to deny one of your sons his dream. And the thing is, I did get that championship and that quarterfinals at Worlds. So all it is this song. Listen, I promise I'll come back in 2024, but I just need to go and play on T1 for 1 year, please. Remember, family. Mental health. No, sorry, look, that's not the time for that. That's not the time. Dude, how can you deny them? By the way, if I was players, I would be using that family angle so hard against these orgs. When they cut you, bench you, I'd use it like a motherfucker. Because that's, by the way, all they're doing is politics. It's all optics. So use it back at, well, I wouldn't say this personally because I think it's immoral. But if you have no morality, spoiler, that's everyone in the LCS. Just do it. Just fuck these teams up. Like, if I was like Jensen, I'd be like, yeah, it's brilliant being in Steve's family. He just cuts you from his family. Like, what the fuck? To get his mate's son into the team because he always wanted him as his son. Like, what the fuck? What a fucked up family this guy's got. Holy shit, mate. If that was your family, mate, they'd be on the fucking stripper pole. You did something wrong. What are you doing?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, after this year, T1 comes knocking for Berserker, especially, if that performance in the
Or an
head-to-head.
LPL team. You could see them building an LPL team around this guy, doing them like they do Viper and Mystic and all those guys. Just let this guy frag out, mate.
Yeah, he certainly has had really a very good season in LCS, and I think he actually probably can hold up in some of the higher tier.
Dude, he looked like a beast even when C9 was shit this split. He was just carrying the whole time, wasn't he?
Yeah, and besides, he's playing with a role swap support, so he must be real good.
By the way, all I'm going to say is this, guys. I'm just going to throw it out there because here's the problem, okay? You're all going to go, well, in Europe, you had Yellowstar. Yellowstar wasn't a great ADC. It was a good ADC. Here's why I know NA sucks. Because in NA, right, if you just role swap to support, you just become a god if you've got mechanics. So if you're Afromu, if you're fucking, what's his name? If you're obviously, I forgot, Sven, Core JJ. It's Hui. Even Hui looks weird. Dude, Hui's better on support than mid. It's like, the support real. This is why Sven should have always swapped. It's the most fucking piss poor role in the whole region. That's why the joke is, like, Core JJ was just smurfing every season. He was like, there's no one to fucking even contest me. This is mental, innit? I know.
To be fair to Core JJ, he did swap and then win Worlds as support. So he was a better support player than he was.
Fair. He actually role swapped this split to being a massive fucking liability from the MVP. Whatever. It's a bit hackney, but whatever. Just keep going. Whatever.
I do wonder if Hansama is going to go back to Europe after this split too, and maybe he's too good. Like, somebody's got to take a flyer on him. Maybe he'll go to G2.
Well, you can build a team around him for sure. Oh, dude, that would be an interesting one. Yeah. What if you went to G? Because here's the thing. I've said this before. Before they claim we were choosing in the off season between like Viper, Hansama and Flackhead, but we tried out Flackhead, which is either. I've heard it's more like once Hansama was like not interested, and then Rogue was like, we're only selling to NA. Then they were like, you know what? I'm not feeling the Hansama angle. It's Viper or Flackhead, and I'm going with Flackhead. Like, the story starts to collapse a little bit, is all I'm saying, It's just, but then again, they did choose right. They did choose right.
So as far as these Worlds group goes...
Oh, we have one last thing we have to say, though. Because the one last thing we have to say is this. I just want to get your take on, like, the final note on TL. Because here's the problem. There have been tons of super teams in history. Like I said, the Fnatic super team ultimately didn't win a championship. It hasn't done anything at Worlds yet. Like, it could yet be quite a big failure. Obviously, the Vitality one was a mega failure. But, like, the problem is, we know the other angle, which is when you shade in the money part too. This really is crazy that nothing came of it. Like, listen, I've had my fun. Like, I don't flame Steve entirely. Like, there's a lot of very good players here. There's a lot of players it's hard to turn down if you can get. Like, as much as you might mean when I'm like Jensen, I would keep Jensen. But then again, if you watch Bjergsen just stack titles your whole career, you're going to think, I want to go with that. Like, let him come to my team for one split. So I think the problem is, I don't know where TL can possibly go from here, though. Because everyone's saying that apparently there's some, like, video where he implies they're not going to go super team. Like, well, no shit on that. He's not going to spend $7 million again, but they have to go back to the traditional style of team now, surely. You have to build like a core out or something.
So I think that this team, can be salvaged. I think TL will still be a very big spending.
Are they keeping
team.
most of the players, you think? Or a core of them? What do you think?
I think you have to keep Core JJ, even because of his kind of bad performance. He's an NA resident, and he's just too fucking valuable.
And you waited all that time for the green card? Yeah, of course.
Also, Hansama was pretty bad this year, so I don't necessarily chalk it all. Core might have lost motivation because, like, the team was bad. Like, you just don't know. The thing about Bwipo was he was their best player throughout the playoffs, but I'm not even sure you keep him necessarily in top lane. Like, you might want to role swap him back to jungle, honestly, as weird as that sounds. People will look at Santorin's playoff performance as well and say he was one of the better players, which he was, but I just don't know if... I think you can do better at the jungle role.
Dude, you know what? That's interesting, because if they kept Bjergsen, let's be real, Bjergsen's history with fucking junglers is ass. We talked about that previously, but... That would be interesting to put Bwipo there. I can tell you right now, Bwipo is someone who can say no. And has his own fucking mind.
This is like my psycho fix DL take. I actually think I roll swap Bwipo to jungle or back to jungle.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to say.
There you go.
He does take up an import slot in that way. But again, I do believe we're heading towards a world where minor region players don't count as imports. So you'll have a larger pool of players to potentially select from. So I think you can pick up maybe a domestic if they're like Cowrie might be fucking available as like a domestic player even though he's Turkish, right? If that rule goes into effect. So you would have a broader pool of potential players to select from. You also never know, I guess, who's going to be available depending on how teams cut budgets, because a lot of the teams are going to be cutting budgets, and you're going to see more people like Spica. Spica might go to TL. There's another one for you. That seems like a potentially very good pickup for them. So I don't think I'd keep Bjergsen, Santorin, or Hansama. I would mostly think about keeping Court JJ or Bwipo. But I think the thing you need to think about too is Steve won with money a lot of the time, not because Steve was the most savvy GM. He's always had like the biggest budget. And so if I'm Steve, sure, I still have the money, but now for the first time ever, Steve has been spent big and not won. Like this was him like really trying to throw the haymaker and then just completely missing. So I look at a new GM and I can't get Jack, who is objectively a better GM than Steve was, because you can say, well, look at all the titles Steve won. Steve did it with a much bigger budget than Cloud9. So in terms of budget to success, I think Jack is a better GM than Steve. Steve obviously is able to attract the star players and deploy that money to win titles. So I'm not.
He's done a very good job signing people. Yeah.
So, but I would say like, you don't lose that because Steve is still going to be the co-CEO based in North America running the League of Legends team. So I think you need a better GM on this roster. And, you know, you talked about Papa Smithy earlier from a GM perspective, but there's a guy who he's had money, but he hasn't had as much money as Team Liquid, and has still attracted star talent. So maybe you look at Papa Smithy. I mean, in theory, TL should be able to outspend anybody considering their long-term sponsorships that we've discussed on previous shows. So maybe you look there, or you look for another GM that you think can be effective. Maybe here's an idea. Maybe you bring Mac over from Mad Lions.
There's an interesting one. Yeah. I mean, another angle would be, it's up to you who you choose it would be, but obviously the Rogue people have done an amazing job scouting year after year.
Yeah, Fly is the GM.
They've done a great job, yeah. And they've killed it.
So I think that the first
there's one other move I would make, though. It's just logical. You're already paying him. Just make Bjergsen roll swap back to coach. He's great at it. I was told by all the shut up, whatever. whatever. And also, here's the thing. I don't
know if Kyoto was the problem either.
I'll tell you another player I would consider. Speaker's available.
That's what I said. Yeah, Speaker.
Yeah. He could absolutely be obviously renovated in this team. Just like the Whipple one's not a bad move either. If you want to keep him in the team, you know. Because I also think I've learned something as well about LCS. Too many people have gone and tried to be the God carry top. It just doesn't work in the long run. It doesn't work in playoffs because that's not how any teams play. The real joke of the LCS, I'm going to do a video on this, is this, right? The actual secret the whole time, in hindsight, looks painfully obvious. You know when they got the first world champion top laner to move to LCS? Just sign him. He's called Impact. If you sign him on Cloud9, you're really good. If you sign him on Team Liquid, your champions are really good. If you sign him on fucking EG, he's really good. Even when he was on NRG, he's really good. Fucking hell. Bear in mind, all you want in NA is a weak side top laner with occasional carry chat picks who can play Gangplank and fucking on and nah and help the made in the ADC, which is the only carry roles in your region, win the team fight in a normal 5v5 front to team, back to team fight in front of a Baron you should never have continued or a fucking dragon you won't stop contesting, aka LCS player. This guy is the dream player. The real question to me is this. I've made the joke before. Should I burn the point from the video? I'll do it. I'll give you whack motherfuckers. I'll double dip, actually. I'm going to say it twice. This is the joke. Are you ready for the... You're going to love this, Monty. I'll frame it very simply. The ultimate indictment of what the LCS owners, coaches, and GMs think about League of Legends is this. They are all horny as fuck to get their turn of Hoonie, but they're all sick of their turn of Impact. Drops the mic. The guy's just money, and it's season 12, guys. He won in season 3. This is mental. Yeah, he's just the most like durable. He is like the Odoamne of LCS.
Yeah, he also
just durable as fuck.
Yeah, he also just really hasn't lost motivation. I mean,
I know, what a winner
in terms of his job, and I think his attitude is basically just like, well, I'm just going to keep playing until somebody's better than me, but they never are. So yeah. He could comfortably retire for the rest of his life with the money that he's made right now, and that continues to not happen. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of options here. Like this offseason, as I've alluded to previously, is going to be pretty crazy in terms of, the thing about Spica that's so funny. By the way, TSM fans, how are you enjoying this? They wouldn't pay Spica $100,000 more a year. Are you fucking kidding me?
No, Monty, you're wrong.
MVP
Monty,
player.
I have to correct you there. TSM has $100 million from FTX, a crypto company, so they can buy probably Faker if they want.
Also, Reggie's going to sell his house if the results don't improve. Hey, turns out all of that was bullshit. Just like Reggie told you that they were going to win Worlds. You might just think Reggie's lying to you, TSM fans, as he has been for fucking years at this point. How can you not see through the constant lies that he tells you? Here's it is. Spica, you lost your core player. If there was one player you fucking keep on TSM, you pay that guy $100,000 more. Okay, it's not outrageous.
And he's for the future, dude. This guy could play for like 5 years and be an MVP candidate. I'm signing this guy for a long time, yeah.
So maybe he goes to Team Liquid. That's certainly in the cards, right?
Yes.
But this also tells you TSM's going budget, baby. If they can't retain, if they can't retain this player. Because this is,
dude, I don't want to live in a world where TSM has like an IMT style roster. Like, I can't handle it, man.
He's had an MVP performance previously, right? He's a resident. He's an NA resident. He's very, very valuable.
He's a champion.
Yeah. So if anything, you need this guy to convince other players to join your roster. So this roster at TSM, guys, you know what this means? It is budget city for TSM coming up. You guys enjoy that, TSM fans. Think about all the lies that have been told to you over the years. Maybe stop being fans of this org. I don't know.
Exactly. What Monty's saying is he's a fucking super potent jungler. Despicable. TSM is despicable, but they're not anymore. Here's the one thing I would say though, mate. The one angle I have to bring up as well. Oh, fuck, I keep forgetting I've had any sleep, mate. What was the fucking angle? There's one last thing we had to hit on here. There's one last thing to hit on.
So many things. Was it TSM related?
Oh, just as an aside, this is more for fans of the show who've been long-time viewers. They know the narratives. They know the things we like to laugh at, right? We don't even have to comment on it. I'll just say it. We'll react to it. We'll put it into history. We'll get the stone thing into the tablet. If you're a fan of the show for a long time, this is like an Onion headline. It's so fucking on the nose, you couldn't satirize it. They might be going to sign. It's a two-parter, so don't get lost in the first part. It's really funny. Wait for the second part too. The first part is Lena is probably going to join Sentinels. Let's just let that brew a second. That's fucking hilarious. That is so fucking... If you don't know Sentinels, essentially, they are the TSM of Valorant. They are the FaZe Clan. The joke is, it's the same shit again. And if you're ready for the punchline, supposedly, it's because this is now they're really serious about getting competitive and not just being about being brands. What are you talking about? That's the opposite of what she's going to do, you idiot. Her whole shit was signing the streamers and getting Doublelift to come back. Like... The joke here, obviously, is like, I wonder who Doublelift's going to replace on fucking Sentinels in Valorant. Like, I know, there's the other one. Mate, just for fans of the show, like I said, that sounds like an Onion headline. It's like, Lena to join Sentinels and build the most competitive team ever. Like, oh, get out my face. Get out my face.
All you have to do is find your Bjergsen to do it for you. He's just
he's
the ultimate like electromagnet, just ripping players out of other regions and attaching themselves to him.
And also, fair play to Lena. She has proven that the way esports in the West operates is on the greater fool principle. I love it. I just love it. It's such an amazing, like, on-brand move for both parties. And I love it. It's so perfect. So
I mean, it really works when you think about it. It really works. God bless American esports.
Yes,
man.
I know. Truly, just when you think they're learning. I know. Do some viewer questions.
All right, we'll do viewer questions. First up, thanks to Esportsbet for obviously sponsoring this show. Head on over, do the World's Prediction Series, and you get that loss bonus for up to $100 USDT. So if you place a bet and you're new and you haven't done this before, then what you can do is message the mods either on the website or even better yet on their Discord if you're over there. Say, hey, I lost this. Mention Insight on Esports. Mention us, and they'll just credit you $100 back to your account. It'll be fun to play with your worlds.
Let me give you a pro tip. Since for the first one you can lose, pick like a decent sized underdog that you think could win. Because if you win, you don't need it back and you get like 2.5 or something. But if you lose, you just get the 100 back. That's how I'd do it personally. If you choose to bet, obviously always gamble at responsibly, be over 18, blah, blah, in the right states. Disclaimer, not compatible with Oregon or what. I don't fucking know. Is it, which is the one that they always say on the, what's the one famously in America? Is it Ohio? What's the one that's always the state that's the outlier from the others? You know, there's that famous thing back in the day where they'd always say like does not apply in Maryland or something. I can't remember which one it is. There was like a classic one that always was like weird or something.
All right, so we are going to go into the GROGcoin channel. I don't think we're going to do all of the questions today, guys, because we got some other stuff to do, Thorin and I. But we'll start. We will start. You guys also ask a lot of questions.
And we got 1 minute to just quickly go to the toilet. It'll take 1 minute.
Let's take a quick break. And then
there we go. Right, we're back for viewer questions. Obviously, you have to say the GROGcoin thing. Go to the Insight and Esports Discord, GROGcoin Lounge, click the pinned tweet. It'll tell you how to buy it. If you get 25, you can ask a question. If you have your bingo cards ready, right, one question is going to be essentially like a writing degree course question for Monty about how to like structure something. One's going to be like about Russian literature. And then probably one of them's like, Thorin, you claim to be an honest person, but didn't you in a dream when in 1989 actually say you'd done your homework when you'd only half done it? So anyway, let's see. Get the bingo cards ready. Let's go.
Who would be the greatest? Who would be the greatest LoL coach if they had a team that listened 100%, no questions asked? That's interesting. I mean, we can't know is the problem who is and isn't being listened to.
I won't lie. On some level, I actually think someone like Reaper's probably in the mix for that. Again, I think he has a brilliant mind for the game. Seems like a very smart guy. Maybe a Peter Dunn. Everywhere he goes, he seems like he has an interesting angle. The players work. Obviously, I'll take like. By the way, the joke is it's probably just already the greatest coaches. Like, I'm sure if everyone could understand what Coba meant, like Blank would have been fucking amazing, wouldn't he? You know what I mean? Like what do you want? Like if Aaron from WE or EDG, they'd be amazing.
I mean,
Daney's
probably. I mean, Daney is a very good coach. I don't know if his players listen to him, but also like part of being a coach is phrasing and framing things in a way or doing things in a way where your players listening to you, right? So you have to change your tactics. Yeah, so I don't know. Who would be the best cast?
Oh, mate, one thing I have to remember. I didn't mention this earlier. This was so crazy. You know, they did like comedy pictures for the LEC finals so that they could show the player who carried the game. Why did they keep showing that picture of Larssen with a huge baseball bat? Do you remember that? Because that was so out of character. It's like Ambition. He had a giant baseball bat. Did you see that? What the fuck?
Rogue got it.
Yeah. I know. Like, what the actual hell is this? I thought it was making some sort of reference to fucking Satoshi Kon. Based. Keep going.
So let's see here. Who'd be the best casting choice for Roose Bolton in Game of Thrones Esports? Max Waldo, Nemesis, Fudge, or Malice? Ooh.
What's the premise though? A casting choice
for Roose Bolton in the esports version of Game of Thrones.
What does choice mean?
No, like who would we pick?
Who would play this character? So essentially, here's the problem, right? It wouldn't really be most of those people because obviously it has to be someone who's like, they have to sort of be fundamentally evil and sort of take pleasure in torturing people. And the thing is, I don't know anyone like, fuck hell. I've got a cold at the moment. Anyway, do you know anyone who'd fit that bill?
Who knows? I don't know. Why are all fans shouting, "Let's go"? Team name. Aren't there more original chants? Yeah, but no British people are inventing the cool chants. So
that's true.
We just have to have shitty American chants.
Yeah. Here's what you guys don't know. You're actually so lucky they didn't like put LEC in your UK or something. Because you know UK crowds, they will get like in football, they'll get like spontaneous chants going that are like they would have just chanted something like, you know, like Riot rigged it or something like when he used it. Because remember, in football games, if you don't know in the UK in football games, they really do chant like the referee's a wanker. It's fucking hilarious. I used to be there when I was 11, like, yeah, he's a wanker. Yeah, oh, it's hilarious. I know.
The UK chants are number one in sports. So let's get some more. Let's get some more UK crowd.
So I'll tell you an example, by the way, of how wild it gets as well. Because if you can't handle banter, you can't play in England. This is real, Monty. When David Beckham became a really famous player, and he obviously was dating she became Victoria Beckham, Posh Spice, right?
Right.
The actual chant was like Posh Spice takes it up the arse from Man United fans, his own team. His own team's fans were like, your wife takes it up the arse. And you have to just go, this is my life. All right, then, yeah. Thank you. And then just like fucking get on the plane. That's mental, innit? I know. That's mental. All I'm saying is Bjergsen's really lucky that he plays in NA.
Also, David Beckham never had to take a break for mental health.
Then again, I don't know how much mental he had going on. That's the problem. I know. I think he's a bit like that movie, The Fly, but it was just The Fly's brain that got in there.
Thoughts on Luka Doncic? Is he overrated? I'm not an NBA fan. He's the Mavs guy, right?
He is. Basically, he's overrated because, first of all, like, he's not a good free throw shooter, despite being a phenomenal shooter, which is a problem. Free throws win you games at the end of the day. Then also, He's also a guy who's not quite as good on defense as like the absolute best players. And the NBA is supposed to be like hockey, a two-way game. You're supposed to also be able to shut the other guy down. And also he's only played a few years, so he hasn't had the chance to go as deep in the play. So here's the thing: he is a mega prospect. It reminds me a bit like Ziwu in fucking CS:GO. It's like because he's really good, they just wanted to make him already the absolute goat bet. It's like, oh, I'm glad you always do this, guys. You got to have nuance. So yeah, he's very good.
If Febiven is a very good player that happens to be the worst to win LEC because mid is so stacked historically, who are some Febiven-like players from other regions?
Okay, because this was the one, if you remember, where I said if Nemesis had won, he would have been the worst, which wasn't even...
Sure.
I'm so genius, I can say something that's technically just accurate, but it's a diss, because that's just the talent I have. If you don't know, Monty, I've always said my superpower in real life is I say the thing that is factually true, but really hurtful. You know this. It is a superpower. Listen, sometimes it's like super villain power as well, I can't lie. The way I wield it's not always reasonable, but yeah, we're trying to figure a player like that. So who would it be in this case for another region?
The problem is Faker has won so many of the titles in LCK. Like
no, they mean like who's the worst just general player, do they mean? Or do they mean mid laner?
Who are some Febiven-like players? So like the worst player at their position. I mean, obviously Hachani.
Who won a title?
Hachani.
We just said him earlier. By the way, might already win. He might already have won this. He is such a fucking bomb. And by the way, listen, I don't know if the statute of limitations is ever going to rise off this. So one day I'll probably just say it on a fucking show. But some of the things that he might have done in his career, fuck that guy. Not just even the one thing you know, but even some of the coaching shenanigans. Fuck this guy. Sadly, he was always a fan favourite. So they're always loving him. Like, fuck that guy. He's definitely a guy who doesn't deserve a title.
I mean, to be fair, the one thing I know is really fucking bad. So.
It's really bad, yeah. Who else? Let's think. Oh, listen, I know I'm going to sound like the biggest hater of all time. I do think Huhi winning fucking the LCS,
how
just
dare
playing
you talk
Aurelion Sol.
Aurelion Sol one
it's
trick
so
like
mental. I mean, I think even Apto famously said like Aurelion Sol's like it's not even like a champion or something. You know what I mean? And also if you don't remember, like he was so stupid. It was like he was the support player in mid already when I know it was so dumb. It was so fucking dumb. What about the problem with the other? Here's the real issue. For China, there's tons of them, mate. Like, there's tons of fucking bums. That Yu Yanjia guy, he had no fucking business being in League of Legends. That's another thing. Here's what you guys don't know. It's usually mildly egregious in the West. Because the players are so high level in LCK and LPL, they can really have like a guy where it's like, how is he in the team? How the fuck is he? But it's because the other four are just so sick. There's been a few like that, haven't there?
In recent years, at least in Korea, it's either been really good teams or T1 winning, so it's been harder to find bums in LCK champions in more recent history, I would say. Sword should have named himself Shield because he can only play tanks. Tactical might as well be named to Leroy Jenkins because there's nothing tactical about him charging alone into the enemy team. Forgiven should be remembered as Forsaken since no team was willing to forgive him for being toxic. What are some hysterically egregious examples of nickname mismatches in esports?
Oh, there's so many, isn't there? So let's think of some right now. I mean, right? Like, if you want one from all of esports, like Simple's a pretty good one. He's probably the most complex character ever play fucking esports in general. Like, yeah, like who knows? He's had the most crazy story in every start. Oh, I mean, it's not simple at all, is it? It's ridiculous.
As you said, Riot itself should be named like authoritarian government.
Yeah,
there's nothing.
They should be called Big Brother. Yeah, rename them Big Brother. Exactly.
They're the ones who shut down the riots brutally.
Exactly. Who else? Let's think. There's got to be some good league ones. Let me think. Oh, look. Even though it's okay at the moment, I still think calling yourself. Because it's supposed to be they don't fit. Yeah, they don't fit. Let me think.
I mean, I think Rookie at
Faker.
this point.
How about Faker? He wasn't. He was the real thing. He was the most real thing that ever existed. Rookie's a good one. The joke is Rookie has played 1 billion years and is really good, but he's called Rookie. I know. It's mental, isn't it? That's pretty bad.
Rookie and Faker are pretty funny ones. Yeah, because Faker was also legit from the first moment he ever set foot on the professional stage. So there was never a point where he was fake.
But it's weird. If people want to know how good Faker was, because the first split he played season was the first time they had the real all-stars. You remember they voted Ambition because traditionally Ambition was the best of the people that were remaining. There was even discussion at the time, maybe it should be Faker in his rookie split. Because he was that insane. It was like, maybe we should just put this guy in there. He's fucking bonkers, isn't he? Let me think who else it should be. Oh, here's an obvious one. Score. Because in no context should you look at the score when this guy's playing. In any, not for the game, not for his lane. That's a pretty good one, actually. That's a mad mismatch name, isn't it?
Okay. Next, Riot often presents a very cocky image. The classic 200 years of design, we know better than you. Only we know what's best. They've done this in LoL, Esports, and even other games. Based on your inside knowledge, do you think this was ingrained in their culture early on? Yes, absolutely. I mean, they function like a cult, guys. They literally have a multi-day... when you are hired for the company, they have like an initiation procedure called denubification, where that's where they like incept all their company ideals in you, saying like, oh, we're the most player focused company in the world, even though they're not. They do things that are not in the best interest of their players all the fucking time. They isolate people, kick out fan favorites from the esports scene, replace people that doesn't make sense to replace because they're popular. They're not doing things for the fans. They're doing things for themselves. But it is very explicit about Riot. I mean, I've had Rioters say the most ridiculous shit to me ever. So one time, this was years ago, a Rioter was talking to me and they're like, we only accept 2% of the applicants that apply to Riot. And I'm like, okay, can you give me a percentage of what percentage of people are actually qualified for the jobs? Because I have a feeling like you can probably throw out about 3/4 of those applications because it's just people who want to work at a video game company who are chancing it.
Exactly.
How many actually qualified candidates? And also from being inside Riot, guys, they do the way that they do their interviews is they will run you through 8 or 10 people, of which any of those 8 or 10 people can veto you. And they prioritize culture fit, which is not disagreeing with them, over qualifications, right? So if you have a procedure where 1 of 10 people can veto you, then what you're going to get is the same fucking person every single time who is non-offensive to 10 different people. So actually, I would argue that they frequently recruit for mediocrity, or at least the fundamental ability to, basically just align yourself with the rest of their vision. You're not going to get people who are really like aggressive about their own viewpoints, that have strong opinions. You're going to get conformists by doing this to their company culture. So they're very top down. Yeah, I mean, it was ingrained very early on from them. I like, you have to remember that the first time I went to Riot was in 2009, where I spent a week at their offices in closed beta. So I have seen every single form of Riot since they had about 30 or 40 employees, and it's always been this level of arrogance. It's ridiculous. It's very unpleasant to be there.
The thing I thought you'd like them, man. The one thing I don't get about Riot is how sort of unearned the arrogance is. Like, that's one thing I always think people don't take a distinction of. Generally, right, plebs don't like arrogant people because they're like, freaking arrogant, whatever. But, like, it depends. Are you just a guy who's an asshole who's average, but you think you're a god? Or are you actually, like, unbelievably good, like some Michael Jordan guy? And then when you say I'm the best, it's sort of like, well, you shouldn't say it, but I guess, it's a pretty legit opinion. So my problem is this, Monty. Think of the games they've made that have succeeded. League of Legends, right? That wasn't even the first Dota clone, for fuck's sake. And it is a Dota clone. Okay, give them a chance. They're doing another game, TFT. So someone else just did auto chess. You've done your version of auto chess. All right, give them a chance. They're working on another game. Valorant. It's just CS, but not as good.
Weeb.
Yeah, and the joke is all these games are just like the original game. Well, that's a good game. It's like, Riot basically is that meme, like, you made this, I made this, plus we are bullshit. Am I missing something? Is that it? Isn't it? Plus we are bullshit.
But weebify it.
And then they're just like, yeah, it's like CSGO, but there's like a pool party skin with your ass out. It's like, all right, I mean, that's one idea. Fucking hell, all right, fucking hell, okay.
Do you rock to Mr. Girl's music? Do you know what that is? I don't know what that is.
Don't know who Mr. Girl is. I'll try
Nope.
searching it.
All right. So now that you know all the major region teams that will attend Worlds, which type of meta do you want the Worlds patch to be for an optimal viewer experience? The one they qualified on. Please, for the love of God, just keep it the same. I don't want teams that aren't good on this meta participating.
This is a good patch too. Looks pretty good.
It's a good patch. I actually really like this patch.
Yeah.
If they change it a bunch, then I think that gives Damwon Kia actually some pretty substantial advantages, given that they have probably some of the largest champion pools across the board coming into this tournament. If Riot announced their final patch, what champions would you enjoy being strong/weak? Oh, so like if they weren't going to balance the game anymore, I would want playmaking champions. So like you want Lee Sin, you want Thresh, you want like the all-time classic champions that have proven to be really big playmakers in any
Rakan.
Yeah, Rakan. Even Orianna is like always a fun one to watch. There's a lot of different things.
Probably Silas.
On that champion. Silas is always good. Big time playmakers. That's what you want. Can C9 keep Berserker this off season? Oh, I guess we already discussed that, so we won't go.
Depends how much money they got.
Yep. Who are the top 5 cleanup AD carry players of all time? Like cleanup ADCs.
That's obviously that is the classic term that I sort of use where it's like I don't
the janitor
credit. Yeah. So the problem is people are going to get offended depending on the scenario, and obviously it also depends on the meta award. So like here's the thing: it depends how hardcore we're going. Like if we're being really hardcore, like here's the thing: on some level, to me, Bang was a bit of a cleanup ADC, but then again, he also could be a carry if like the right team around him, you know. So, but I did think he was generally best when you had like the carry top, you had Faker mid, and then the idea is you get through lane, and then in a team fight you can carry. I thought he was perfect at that. That's why I actually thought he was one of the most inappropriate LCS imports ever, because they brought him like he was Uzi I dude and just shoved him on like under things like go on then mate, carry. It's like, I don't have SKT around me, you idiot. Like, how am I supposed to do that? I'm just an ADC. Like, I think there's one that was a bit over it. Who else are we going for this one? Because we have to go for good ones here. We're not trying to do bombs.
I mean, Reckless.
Reckless is a classic one. I would say he's probably the best at it. Yeah. He's very good at that, yeah.
Score, before he switched
Score was very good. Yeah. Listen, this is a bit, I don't know if it's top 5, but if you're in the right team, I always thought Teddy did a very good job at that.
Yeah. Yep.
Here's a good one. Is there anyone we're missing? I'm missing Sneaky, just to make you all hurt inside. You can like him and he can just not be the best.
Look, there's nothing wrong with cleanup AD carries. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's a freak accident and the entire royal family is killed. The genealogists get to work and find out you and Thorin are next in line to the throne. Question: upon your ascension as divine ruler of the British Empire, what are your new king names?
Oh, because you pick if you don't know, the joke here, if people don't know, is because the royal family is not in any way historically English or British. They're actually from Germany, if people don't know. Hence why World War One was actually for real 3 fucking cousins in different countries on different sides. Like that's mental. And they all look the same. There's a picture where they just all look the same. So what the idea is, instead of being called something German, spoiler, we don't really like those anymore. You pick an English name, don't you? So obviously George, Charles. So you have to go with a classic name. So what would your favourite be? What do you enjoy the most?
I would go back to the very beginning and be King Arthur. We're just kicking it right back to the core origins of British mythology.
Okay.
And we're going with that one.
Okay. Let me think what I would go for here. What were the good ones? The thing is, Charles is a very classic name. Like, both of the Charleses were fucking bangers. The first one got his head cut off because he was the fucking legend and started the Civil War. Then the second one was just like sneaking around, fucking around with shit. When he saw, sadly, the third one's a bit whack. But I'm going to be the fourth, so I'm going to fucking redeem it all. Exactly. I've turned it back. I'm bringing the trilogy back. The franchise rather. The franchise. There you go. Charles the Fourth.
Which team from the West does not make it out of play-ins? Well, based on the play-ins, it's probably going to be EG or Mad Lions. I'd say EG, just given their current problems. You are now the owner of the newest LCS team and have a bottomless pit of money. Who do you hire as your GM, head coach, and star player? Oh, this is a fun one.
Oh, okay. So GM, let's think. Remember, he said bottomless. So who could it be?
I probably get Papa. I mean, I think Papa's done a really good job with the budget that he's been given, and I already have a rapport with Papa, and so if I was going to be working with Papa, that would be important. So I'd probably take him.
I mean, in theory, we could choose people from Asia as well.
That's true.
I'll tell you what, I actually think one of the most underrated of all time. like coach last year. Was that Aaron guy who was in WE and then EDG for all? He was in WE, best team in the world. He was in EDG, like the best team in China with Nami and that. Then he was in EDG with Deft, like, and then later even they had the teams were like fucking high. But mate, that was mental how many times they rebuilt that squad, wasn't it? The guy was a beast. It was just before his time because China didn't win at the time, you know. Oh, let me think. Who else as well? Tell you what, if assuming you're going to say, like, technically there will be someone else who will have the general manager job, of course, but in theory, Carlos makes the decisions in G2. You can't really argue with what he's done. Mate, remember he started winning in 2016. He's had a pretty good fucking run, hasn't he? Yeah, pretty good.
I just didn't consider him because he's like...
Oh, do you know what I forgot to mention? It's even more significant that Larssen beat Caps. Are you ready? Because they showed a stat on screen, Monty, at the beginning before the series began. Caps had not only won 7 out of 7 finals. Are you ready? He was 21-3 in finals. Larssen doubled his fucking loss record, homie.
That's pretty sick.
That's mental, isn't it? What a way to win, because essentially, fans, what that means is Rogue choked. By the way, the one against Mad Lions in the spring last year, they probably even should have won. Like, that was the team you could beat. They could have beaten Fnatic, maybe G2 this split. But, like, that is, like, basically, like, you picked the hardest guy of all time to fucking beat in the final for your first one. What a way to break through. Anyway, next question, go
on. Well, head coach and star player. I mean, I'd still probably take Core JJ because he's the most valuable player in theory in the region because he is an NA resident and he fills a position of need and he provides the veterancy and leadership on your team. As for
is it supposed to be LCS? Am I missing something?
Yeah,
it's supposed
LCS
to be LCS
team.
To go. Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the LCS part. Okay.
I mean, but you could hire anybody for your LCS team, right? But,
I see what he means. Unlimited money, but in LCS. Okay. Because I was wondering why is Monty thinking so small? Call JJ, mate. You know we can go just get like Prime Matter or like Mad Life or something. Yeah. Oh, okay, there we go.
As our head coach, I think you could. If I had to do LCS, I'd probably take Peter Dunn just because as good as some other coaches can be, I think the language barrier can be an issue for head coaches. I think for strategic coaches, you could bring in some interesting people, but head coach, I'd probably take somebody more domestic. It seems to me that League actually functions with cores as it pertains to a jungler plus X lane, big jungle, or support jungles. I think that's true. Do you agree with this premise? And does this give more credit to the IG teams of old, as in meaning that IG didn't have that core? It was just like top mid, so it was horrible.
Low key, that's also why I actually do think individual play, accomplishments aside, I think Rookie is the GOAT. Motherfucker was like winning his championships with Ning, sometimes Leon, and fucking Bowlan, and that's already when we got to the time where support roams. Like, I agree, it used to be jungle mid was the duo. Now it's jungle mid support, isn't it? That's, if you notice, that's why Rogue suddenly the shit. They got the right one to complement Larssen. So yeah, I would say that's a pretty good angle. It's a pretty good angle.
Yeah, I like that too, because it's just those are the roles that impact the map most, and so they give you the best chance of winning or propping up your AD carry or top laner. Do you think the ecosystem of esports would be better if membership in a league gave co-streaming rights, give broadcast rights to the teams to monetize and creates more competition in terms of broadcast for talent? So it actually does in certain regions. Like, for example, at least in LCK, they can pick their, they have so many broadcast slots. So like, LS used to occupy T1s, Nemesis would occupy Gen Gs, Kadril would occupy DRXs, I guess. I think they stopped doing that because obviously like Kadril's with Excel and LS isn't with T1 anymore, and they still co-stream LCK. But I do think that teams should be able to hire specific, they should be able to have LCS co-streaming for, like, it's not really, I mean, I've mentioned this before in LCS co-streaming, but it's like, it's kind of wacky that Cloud9 gets I Will Dominate, and they can sell sponsorships against the viewership of Dom stream. So I think every team should have the right to have an X number of slots that they can allocate as they see fit.
What a crazy idea. Imagine Riot evenly judging all the teams and giving each of them a similar chance and not just making the rich get richer, Monty. Call back to the earlier part of the episode. So yeah, weird how that works, isn't it?
Often when I bet on Esportsbet, I bet on the match score in a BO5 series. When there is a heavy favorite, I bet on the winner by 3-1 or greater, for example. This hasn't worked so well in this playoffs because of the silver scripts. Yeah, it's been rough. However, do you think this is a worthwhile betting strategy, or is it just smarter to bet the winner, no strings attached? I think it really depends on the odds, because you have to remember
that pumping the odds up to go to the 3-1, right?
Yeah. So like, I think that is a good strategy as long as you're putting smaller amounts of money on that. But a lot of like 1.3 odds are not really worth taking. You want like, higher than that. for a favorite, because it oftentimes in League, like for example, the Rogue at like 3.4, 3.5 or whatever, that would imply that Rogue has like a 20% chance of winning that finals, which is just like ridiculous. Like they definitely had more than a 20%. They probably had like a 40% chance of winning that finals. And obviously even more impressive that they 3-0'd it. But those kind of odds, I think you just put a small amount on the underdog.
I would also say maybe the attenuating factor for me would be not just that I think this team is better and will win. If you think they genuinely like draft gap the other team, that's probably the time to do the 3-1.
Yeah. What piece of media are you most excited to share with a child, and what age would they have to be?
Obviously, I hope you mean like obviously it's your son or your daughter or your cousin. No, you're not going to trick us like that, mate. You're not going to trick us like that on camera. So you can get up pretty early in the morning to trick me, mate.
Obviously, like
take a seat over there, please. Sir. Like, what the fuck is that question? I know. Like,
as somebody who has a kid, there's a lot that I'm excited to share with him when he gets older. I think for me, it's just like classic mythology, being able to read those books to him and have him understand them, because in my mind, that's like the core of human wisdom. In terms of more modern fiction, like, I guess I'm excited. Like, I think Alice in Wonderland is great. I think Peter Pan is great as children's literature, like classics children's literature that I'm looking forward to sharing with him and reading with him. Yeah.
One
classical film.
Because what's hilarious is you're all going to think, I know about that. You don't know anything about that because you already watched one movie and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Do you know there's a whole set of Narnia books? And that movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, was just book one.
Yeah,
and what happens is it's a world that children go to. And the whole premise of it also is they get older and eventually they're in some of the other books as well, like The Dawn Treader and that. They're in those. All the adventures are wild, by the way. The one after that, they're on like ships and stuff. They go around this whole different universe. And as they get older, some of them move on because it's also about the idea when you're not a child anymore and the innocence goes, the imagination goes, you become a man, you become part of the normal world. It's one of those like mad based things that like people used to write in fiction back then, a bit like in The Never-Ending Story, how there's that whole thing of the dark. If you watch that as an adult now, you're like, what the fuck, this is insane, this fucking backstory. It's all about like the human imagination, and people don't read books anymore, they just watch TV. And also right towards the end of that series, there's like a one-off book that's mega. It's just a super out there book. It's called like The Magician's Nephew or something. It's where this like kid goes in, he's getting all these like magic rings. It's just fire. So if I actually want an excuse to read those again, so I would read it with my child, the one that I conceived, and in no way have anything untowards. And you will never catch me that question. That sounded like the most trapped question I've ever heard in my life.
So I don't think it was intended to be, but yeah.
I know, but just the way it was phrased, I know.
So I'm not a massive fan of the Narnia books because I think it's like to a certain degree, it's like a Trojan horse for Christianity, and I'm not wild about Christianity as a religion.
Here's the problem, Monty. Everything you just said, it's about Western, so it's Christianity then. The whole way through, just woven into the whole thing.
Look, man, I'm not crazy about Lion Jesus, is all I'm saying. But I am crazy about his Dark Materials where they go kill God. That's more my angle.
Whack.
That's more
fucking garbage, man. Just garbage.
I really like his Dark Materials. So let's see here. Oh, no, we're gonna rid of that. Somebody's like, well, sorry, they asked about the disclosure question, so that's fine.
By the way, since people are going to go like, I'm an atheist, there's no such thing as an atheist. An atheist is just someone who got the circuits of his brain that are called religion. It's hardwired into the human mind, and you just overplanted it with what's science. And here's a very quick version. Science is just the mundane and observable parts of the magical, supernatural, like whatever concept of reality that exists. And everything that isn't that seems woo-woo because it just can't be measured in the same way. So that's just a fucking truth drop, but keep going.
No. I admit I am an atheist, but I also say it's an irrational position because the rational position is agnosticism. In the same way that people believe in God, I don't believe in God, and that's just how it is. And that's
here's the one thing I'll say. I'll just say one thing, and I learned it from C.S. Lewis. The logic goes like this: if the idea is there's no God, there's no creative force, there's no teleology to the universe. Look up that word. You don't know it, fans at home. Therefore, shut the fuck up and listen. There's no teleology to the universe. It's all random events, random chance, random chemical interactions, random evolution, random things happening. Random events, comets, random space, random cycles, things are going to die. If that's all the case, right, then how the fuck randomly could your mind have an ironclad thing called logic and reason, which you use to logically reason there is no God and nothing in the universe and it means nothing? Which is it? Which, because logically that's a delusion. Logically, that's just a random delusion in your brain. Listen, you can believe it. I'm not hitting anyway. You can believe whatever you want.
I just embrace nihilism, and then what I do is I use ritual and mythological traditions to access the unconscious and subconscious parts of my brain, or at least appease them. You know what I mean? So I just believe it's all in your mind, and that you just have to enact ritual, and you have to enact parts of the subconscious in order to keep yourself sane.
Great. It's all in your mind. It's just the problem is your mind is the whole universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep going.
I believe God is inside my own brain. That is what I believe. So it's not that, I suppose it's not that God doesn't exist. I just believe that I am God. So there you go.
There you go.
What are your favorite comedians or comedies? I'm not a big stand-up guy, but you are.
Okay. I'll go through the classics. Bill Hicks, one of the all-time greats. Love his shit. Bill Burr, modern day one. Just a very consistent comic. I listen to any of his. Similar with Lucy K, amazing fucking like technician, constantly coming up with new material. Let me see. I'll give you some like more off the wall ones. There's a guy who does mad straight edge stuff, by the way, where there's no swearing in it. On the guy called Brian Regan, he just kills it. It's basically like almost like a Jim Carrey performance, just really good. There's some good ones. Let me think. I'll give you one more. Oh, Doug Stanhope, of course. There's a mad one. Yeah, there you go. There's a few good ones. There you go.
As for comedies, best comedies are Shakespearean comedies. There you go. What would you do as tournament organizers if VCS is not able to attend due to visa issues? I mean, that's the nightmare, right?
Same as he did it every other one.
I guess Team Liquid's going to Worlds.
Oh, man, that would make me so sad if that happened. It'd be so bullshit, wouldn't it?
Guess who has American visas, Thorin? It's
the fact they're in NA, I know, is the most gross part in it. I know, it's fucking gross. That's why the joke is, look, this isn't what's going to happen, but what would be really funny, I would just laugh myself to sleep, is if, because they think they're out of Worlds now, they do like G2, you want to get ahead of the game and start, before even the off-season begins, Monty, making the new team. So you bring everyone in for their final reviews and exit interviews. You tell them, oh, look, you're not going to be on the team anymore. It didn't work out. But then all of a sudden, the next week, you have to call them up like, hey, can we all come back to the house? We have to play at Worlds now. That could be hilarious in itself. That could be good in itself.
I mean, the real joke of this whole visa situation is that they should have just put fucking Worlds in Mexico, because you wouldn't need any visas basically to go there from anywhere, and they have no restrictions. So it would have been a lot easier if the entire event was in Mexico, but it's not. So, but at least Team Liquid could go to Mexico easy for play-ins if they had to. But in all seriousness, I think the next step is probably to invite Team Liquid. Maybe if you can get another PCS team there as well, if both Vietnamese teams can't go.
I've got a solution. To keep the spirit of having the VCS slot, Monty, it's totally logical. You can make a team. You have to make a team of 5 Vietnamese ethnic American visa owning players. You can figure out how to do it. They already have to be in NA, put this squad together, chuck them in the group. I think that's what you do. That's the spirit of that fucking slot.
Also, just low key, because of the way that visas work for these tournaments, if it looks like you could qualify for Worlds, you often start the visa process. So I would bet LNG already has American visas.
Right, there you go. Yeah, true.
Because that process for Chinese teams takes a really long time. So oftentimes they have to initiate that process for like a bunch of the teams before they know who qualifies. So LNG should already be cleared, I would think.
Would also be the most Chinese thing of all time, just bring another Chinese team. I know.
I mean, I'm for it. It would make Worlds better.
It would be like a bag of tournament, yeah.
Is it time for another Reflections with Odo?
The problem with that question is, if anyone knows this, I don't answer any questions about upcoming interviews because I don't want anyone to place public pressure onto a player. So I'll never answer as to whether I'm going to do another one in general, basically. So I won't answer that. If it happens, it happens, and it'll get done.
I think it would be cool.
You can decide if it should. Yeah, of course. The only problem is I'll have to check. When was the last time I did one with him? Was it that long ago? I always can't remember how long it might have been a few years. Let me have a look. It's because I've had him on talk shows, I think. I'm thinking it was like recently, but let's have a look. Oh, it's 2018. Yeah. If we're in a hypothetical world where these things could all come together, would be interesting.
That's you'd actually capture his entire time on Rogue. There's a lot to discuss there.
That's wild.
What does Larssen have to do to win an MVP award at this point? I mean, he didn't deserve it this split. He was kind of bad.
No. But I do think those past ones where, dude, he couldn't even get in like the top 2. It didn't matter. Like they could win every game in the split. It didn't matter. You could never get in there because the problem is as well, look at the people they're putting in the MVP slots, Monty, and you'll know why he can never win the MVP. Caps, Hylissang, Humanoid, right? That's just fan favourite style of play. You just like people who go balls deep in, and if it works, it looks great. And if you int, you go, well, you take the ints with the thing. But the problem is, like, why does the guy who's just all around, you can never win as the consistent player. You don't do it. Froggen had the same problem. He only won because he just really was the best that year. He was fucking unreal in Season 4. So I just don't think those players can win. Sometimes, also, there's just narratives. It's why Jensen hasn't won an MVP. By the way, how fucking badly is that going to age when the history ends? That everyone will look at the LCS, they'll look at Jensen's titles in LCS, they'll look at his longevity in LCS, they'll look how many top teams he played for in LCS, they'll look at the fact that he had all those Worlds runs, he had the MSI run, they'll look at the fact that in Season 7 summer they voted him first team all mid laner, and at the end they'll go, never won a single MVP. That's wild, isn't it, when you think back? Never even won split, ever. So I think Larssen has the same fate. He has to just stack championships. That's what you have to do, and that's how you get your revenge. You stack the championships.
All right, guys, we're going to do one more question. There are more. You can reserve them for future shows. We just have to go and do something else right now. And we've been very good.
4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been very good about answering all of these other weeks. So other than Cowrie, because that's too easy, who is the weakest player of LEC and LCS? So collectively, all the teams that are going from
wouldn't
LEC
even be Cowrie, by the way.
LCS, it wouldn't be. That is being sent to Worlds. So of the teams,
the team's going to Worlds. Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be LEC would be Rogue, G2, Fnatic, and Mad Lions. Who is the weakest player on these rosters?
Does he mean in terms of form though? Because the problem is, as a player, Hylissang isn't weak, but I think his form is very weak.
I mean, Humanoid's form is also kind of compared to
Wonder looked shit in the end, but then again, he was good for the rest of the split. So I don't know about that one.
I do think probably overall, it could be Armit.
Armit deserves it. I notice everyone hasn't talked about that. He just saves it for the playoffs, mate. Stop fucking saving it. What you doing, saving for next year or something?
And as for C900 Thieves and EG, it's Danny. In this meta.
Yeah, logically.
Like, I don't know who would be it besides Danny, given his performance in the playoffs. So it depends on, I'm sure, and by the way, guys, I'm sure Danny will go. They'll just have Cowrie there as a sub, obviously. Like, why wouldn't you do that?
By the way, no, I guess we did address it earlier, but that is obviously the part that no one thinks about, isn't it? They also just think like, oh, it's all great, and then he'll go home, and it's like, no, if anything, the way the Cowrie guy actually played and the meta of champions does actually mean you have a real hard choice. And by the way, this is what will backfire on you, mate. If they pick Cowrie, I don't know how you're gonna look like a fool with all that family statement that you kept making about support. It's just gonna make you look silly because you'll make a business decision, which is fine, but you've pretended you're a family. Which is, are you a family or a business? Because spoiler, if your family is your business, that's pretty creepy.
I mean, the PR move that they're gonna do is like, oh, Danny still isn't ready to play again, right? Which might be true. Okay. We don't know the issue, but
academy player maybe down he goes.
I think at least for Worlds, given that Danny suffered this in a very crucial moment in a high stress point of the playoffs, you literally cannot send Danny to Worlds alone now. Like, that's off the table. You have to have Cowrie there as a sub, especially since you already brought him back to the States. I assume he's just going to sit, in NA for the rest of Worlds now. You have to have him as your sub player. Okay. There's one. Favorite sea shanties. I have to do this one. Rolling down.
All for me, Grog.
All for me, Grog.
I know, there you go. What is it? Come
classic. On. I'm a huge fan of Rolling Down to Old Maui.
Because a Flashpoint.
It's a.
That sounds like an after party I once had at Flashpoint. Just a shit joke. I don't know. Whatever. Keep going.
So Rolling Down to Old Maui. Great wailing song. There you go. So I have a lot of favorite sea shanties, though. We'll do that more of that at a different time. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. We will be off, actually, for the next couple weeks. We will do a play-in preview show. I'll assemble the usual guests of minor regions experts to inform both you and me, who doesn't watch the minor regions, about all of their various. We allow them the stage to hype up their minor regions for play-ins. Usually is pretty fun. So we'll look forward to that, the mega episode with that preview. And then in Worlds, we'll be rolling as usual. So we'll probably do 7 or 8 shows during Worlds, like before play-ins, after play-ins, which is also before groups, then halfway through groups in the round robin, then after groups, then which is before quarters, and then before semis and before finals. So that's like 7 or 8 shows right there. So there will be tons of content for you guys to watch. So look forward to that then. We'll see you later.